Chapter 420. The cave rented by Immortal and Devil Abode was indeed as the shopkeeper said, it was of excellent quality and had a quiet environment. Mo Tiange felt it wasn't bad, so she randomly picked one and settled down. Then she told the shopkeeper that the two of them were going to meditate and recuperate, so he didn't need to disturb them before the end of the term. The shopkeeper repeatedly said yes, indicating that the people of the inn would absolutely not disturb them. If the two seniors had any instructions, they could go to the inn to find them or send them a voice transmission. Mo Tiange was very satisfied, so she rewarded the shopkeeper with some spirit stones and sent him away. Then she laid restrictions around the cave, indicating that she didn't want to be disturbed. She closed the cave and temporarily isolated it from the world. This cave was very big. It was fully equipped with cultivation rooms, concocting rooms, and spiritual beasts rooms. There were also many cultivation rooms. Mo Tiange straightforwardly threw Nia Wuxiang into one of the cultivation rooms to fend for herself while she randomly picked another one. She then laid the devil aura isolating formation left by the shopkeeper and entered the virtual sky world. Since Nia Wuxiang could survive for 5 years, most of the primordial devil aura had been tamed by her, so she didn't need to worry at all. She spent a lot of effort to rent a cave in Guifang City just because it was difficult to explain the virtual sky world. Besides, the spiritual aura in the virtual sky world conflicted with primordial devil aura, so it wasn't as suitable for Nia Wuxiang as Guifang City. In addition, the news she heard from the innkeeper made Mo Tiange a little worried. She wasn't too surprised that City Lord Mei was still alive. After all, she was a nascent soul cultivator. Even if she couldn't defeat her, she could always run away. With the omnipotent abilities of nascent soul cultivators, she could hide somewhere and wouldn't be found even if she wanted to. Although City Lord Mei wasn't a threat to them now, Nia Wuxiang swallowed the primordial devil aura he worked hard to cultivate, and she ran away with Nia Wuxiang, causing City Lord Mei to fall short of success. She turned from a city lord into a stray dog. This hatred could be said to be irreconcilable. Having a nascent soul cultivator as an enemy was really not a good thing. However, it was useless to worry now, so Mo Tiange just thought about it and put it aside. As for the internal grievances in Guifang City, she didn't care. She and Yang Qingji were just acquaintances. Moreover, after so many years, she wasn't in the mood to meddle. This matter reminded her of Ling Yunhe. When she had parted ways with Ling Yunhe, they had agreed to meet after 3 months to collect the reward. Who would have thought that the two of them would fall into City Lord Mei's trap the moment they left the carefree valley? However, with Ling Yunhe's character, he wouldn't go to refuse to pay her, right? Ling Yunhe and Ling Yunhe didn't want to refuse to pay, right? Mo Tiange couldn't help but laugh. Ling clan devil clan's devil. She mountains she said Mo, and Rance mountains mountain. They were injured. After cultivating, they, and seemed to have, and began to looking ding. They may say. They. And seemed. And. They weren't injured in the first place. After this period of cultivation, they seemed to be showing signs of advancing, so they began to look for suitable spiritual herbs to eat again. In terms of spiritual beasts' cultivation speed, the 3 of them were already too fast. However, spiritual beasts' realm breakthroughs weren't as troublesome as human cultivators, so Mo Tiange just let them be. In any case, they wouldn't be faster than her in the end. Several months later, while Mo Tiange was adjusting her breath, she suddenly felt something was wrong. Mo Tiange stopped recuperating and opened her eyes. After thinking for a while, she hurriedly left the virtual sky world. As soon as she came out of the virtual sky world, she immediately felt a strong and vast devil aura. As soon as she appeared, the devil aura ignored the devil aura isolation formation and rushed towards her violently. Mo Tiange was startled. She unleashed the art of primordial origin to protect herself before stepping out of her cultivation room. On the way to Nia Wushang's cultivation room, the devil aura became denser and denser. Although it couldn't compare to those nascent soul devil cultivators, it wasn't too far off. In fact, the devil aura here was even slightly purer. By the time Mo Tiange stepped into Nia Wushang's cultivation room, she was completely shocked. At that moment, Nia Wushang was sitting cross-legged on the stone bed, adjusting her breath with her eyes closed. Her whole body was surrounded by thick devil aura. This devil aura seemed to have a life of its own as it circled around her, neither too fast nor too slow. The momentum coming from her body was already far beyond the middle stage of the core formation realm. It was even much higher than the late stage of the core formation realm. She was only one step away from the nascent soul realm. Could it be that Nia Wushang made a realm breakthrough? Mo Tiange watched for a while, but in the end, she shook her head. No, this wasn't a realm breakthrough. It was the devil aura that was too overbearing, so it had such a strong momentum. That monster was originally prepared by City Lord Mei for her. With his identity as a nascent soul cultivator, it was absolutely no small matter that this primordial devil aura could help him make a realm breakthrough. Although the part Nia Wushang swallowed wasn't all of it, it still surpassed her own realm. With so much primordial devil aura, it wasn't surprising that she had such a strong momentum all of a sudden. However, Mo Tiange couldn't help but recall Master Song Fang's eccentric and ruthless temperament, as well as his appearance that was neither human nor ghost. Now that Nia Wushang really embarked on such a path, would she also become like him? Just as she was thinking about this, Nia Wushang suddenly opened her eyes and smiled at her. This smile made Mo Tiange's taut heartstrings loosen in an instant. From the looks of it, she seemed to be the same as before, there was nothing wrong with her. So you're awake. How do you feel? Nia Wushang stretched herself, and the devil aura around her body suddenly danced along with her movements. I'm so tired. How long did I sleep? 5 years. Seeing that Nia Wushang's movements were normal, Mo Tiange knew there was nothing wrong with her, so she felt relieved. So it's been 5 years. Nia Wushang seemed to be sighing with emotion. After a while, she finally smiled and said, I'm fine. Although I can't completely absorb this devil aura, I've already tamed it. Now, I just need to slowly absorb it all. That's good. Now that she was sure Nia Wushang was fine, Mo Tiange no longer worried about her. She carefully looked at Nia Wushang in front of her and couldn't help but say, looking at your current appearance, you already look like a complete devil cultivator. I wonder if this primordial devil aura has any disadvantages. Will you end up like your master in the future? This question made Nia Wushang dazed for a while. After a long time, she lowered her head to look at her hand. On her hand, there used to be a wound corroded by the black water in Carefree Valley. After being cleansed by the primordial devil aura for 5 years, this wound was long gone. The remaining corrosive power was also completely devoured by the primordial devil aura. This primordial devil aura was indeed the most overbearing aura in this world. Neither the dead aura nor the filthy aura could compare to it. I also don't know. Nia Wushang looked indifferent as she said calmly, I wasn't a real devil cultivator before. It was just that the spiritual aura and devil aura inside my body were mixed, so I was neither a Dao nor a devil. At present, this primordial devil aura seems to be quite obedient and shows no signs of corroding my body, but it's hard to say how my cultivation level will improve in the future. She hesitated for a moment then continued to say, the reason why my master became like this is because he practiced the primordial devil great art too early. When he was in the foundation building realm, he suffered chi deviation because he was greedy for more. Now that I'm in the core formation realm, my meridians and dantian were tough enough, so they weren't corroded after being attacked by this primordial devil aura. Logically speaking, I should be better off than him. Although that was the case, she wasn't sure whether she would become like that or not. After all, there were too few people who practiced this so-called primordial devil great art, so she basically didn't have any examples to compare herself with. Ever since she came to Yunzhong, she didn't have a single friend. Coincidentally, she met Nia Wushang at this time. During this period of time, the two of them experienced so many things together that she already regarded Nia Wushang as a friend, so she couldn't help but feel sad for her. Before this, she had just decided to become a real cultivator, but because of this reason, she had no choice but to absorb primordial devil aura and become a devil cultivator. Now, she had to face the possibility of becoming an inhuman monster in the future. Mo Tiange had always felt that although her life could be considered smooth, her life before she was 20 years old was full of difficulties and bumps. It wasn't until now that she realized how lucky she was. Like Nia Wushang, she lost her mother when she was born, grew up under her master's hatred and torture, and finally escaped. She wanted to live her own life, but she was forced to accept this kind of future. In the more than 100 years she lived, she suffered a lot. Fate was really unfair to her. You don't have to look at me like that. Nia Wushang smiled. This is an unknown in the end. Maybe I'll really become a top cultivator in one fell swoop with the help of primordial devil aura and move unhindered in the world. At that time, I don't know how many people will envy me. In the end, Mo Tiange didn't show any sympathy. Someone with a firm character like Nia Wushang didn't need sympathy. Do you know about the primordial devil great art? Nia Wushang didn't hesitate. Before I left, I stole a lot of master's treasures, including the primordial devil great art he comprehended. However, it's hard to say whether this primordial devil great art has any mistakes or omissions. In any case, the primordial devil aura in my body is enough for me to absorb for many years. I think I'll slowly tame this primordial devil aura first, then see if I can practice the primordial devil great art. I really don't want to become like Master, who has a bad temper and is neither human nor ghost. Mo Tiange nodded silently. In this kind of situation, this was already the best way. Let's not talk about this. Nia Wushang put away her slight melancholy, looked around, and asked curiously, "Where are we? Where are those people? Although I put my life in your hands, I didn't expect you could really escape." It really surprised me. A smile also appeared on Mo Tiange's face. Back then, we were only able to escape because of luck. She recounted everything that happened that year in detail, but she changed escaping into the virtual sky world to hiding in the bewildering trace fog. In the end, City Lord Mei didn't find them. As for the others, I also don't know. Later, I came to Guifang City, rented this Immortal's cave, and never left it. But I heard that the City Lord's mansion in Descending Star City was slaughtered by Nidal City in one night. City Lord Mei has long left the city and escaped the disaster. Nidal City. Nia Wushang thought for a moment then said, "So, there were also cultivators from Nidal City who were tricked into the trap with us that day?" That should be the case. The two of them talked about some things. After Nia Wushang finished understanding the current situation, she thought for a moment then asked, "You're injured. Do you want to stay here until you recover?" Of course. Mo Tiange didn't hesitate. Yunzhong is full of dangerous places. If I'm injured, it'll be really inconvenient. Nia Wushang expressed her agreement and stretched her body again. Alright, my body is still not used to the current situation, so I'll stay here with you for a few more days. Alas, my body is stiff. For us martial cultivators, not moving for 5 years is really not a good thing. I'll go exercise. She got up, got off the bed, and was about to leave the cave. In the next moment, Mo Tiange suddenly felt an extremely strong momentum attack her, and then a loud noise came from the entrance of the cave. She turned to look at the entrance and was instantly dumbfounded. Nia Wushang was frozen there with a shocked expression. Her right hand was still in the position of pushing the door, and the restriction and stone door set at the entrance of the cave were completely broken. Chapter 421. Mo Tiange was in a daze for a long time before she regained her composure. She rushed over and saw that the stone door had been smashed into powder, and the restriction at the door was also broken. The stone door was fine, even a foundation building cultivator could break it, but this restriction was personally laid by her. Although it wasn't a top-grade formation, it couldn't be broken by ordinary core formation cultivators. She looked at Nia Wushang in disbelief. "What did you do just now?" Nia Wushang, who was still absent-minded, murmured, "I just pushed it." After she said that, she finally realized something. She looked down at her hand and saw nothing unusual except for the primordial devil aura on it. No matter what, Nia Wushang was still in the middle stage of the core formation realm, so the primordial devil aura in her body could only cause this. Mo Tiange shook her head with a bitter smile. "This is good. Even if you run into a nascent soul cultivator, you won't be trampled on." Although this kind of movement couldn't compare to the strength of a nascent soul cultivator, it already had a momentum that could rival it. However, being too powerful wasn't necessarily a good thing. Powerful strength needed an equally powerful container to contain it, and this container was a cultivator's body, meridians, and dantian. Although Nia Wushang had this kind of strength now, she was still in the middle stage of the core formation realm, which definitely wasn't a good thing. If she used it forcibly, she might explode and die. How could Nia Wushang not understand this? She was stunned for a long time before she said, "It's too late to regret now. We can only do as we see fit." As she said that, she looked down at her hand and waved it lightly. With a loud bang, a boulder at the entrance of the cave was smashed into pieces. Nia Wushang was a bit dispirited by this scene. How could she move around with such a big movement? Would she really change from a martial cultivator to a devil cultivator in the future? Mo Tiange asked, "How's your body?" "I haven't used the primordial devil aura much, so I can't feel anything." She then lowered her head and sighed. "It seems I'll have to stay here for a long time." "What?" "Although I have the powerful primordial devil aura, I don't have a high enough realm. I must enter closed-door meditation to stabilize my realm." Nia Wushang smiled bitterly. "Maybe 3 to 5 years, or maybe 10 to 20 years. If I'm unlucky, it's not impossible for me to enter closed-door meditation for 100 years. Mo Tiange agreed. "With how strong your primordial devil aura is now, it'd be best if you advance to the nascent soul realm. That way, you'll be able to absorb all of it." Although she hadn't advanced to the nascent soul realm yet, she had 2 nascent soul cultivators by her side, so she understood nascent soul very well. The primordial devil aura in Nia Wushang's body was comparable to a nascent soul cultivator's, but because her realm was limited, she couldn't fully display it. Moreover, if she forcibly used it, it would even cause harm to her body. Given the current situation, she would only be able to resolve this crisis if her meridians and dantian completely absorbed it. Nia Wushang nodded, then sighed and said, "I also think so. Although I was forced to walk on the path of devil cultivators, I still want to live well and continue cultivating." Whether she was a righteous or a devil wasn't important. In today's world, no one had ever ascended for more than 100,000 years. Even if Nia Wushang became a devil cultivator, she didn't need to think too much about it. It wouldn't be too late to consider it when she really had the chance to ascend one day. The two of them discussed it and decided to stay here for some time. Nia Wushang decided to subdue all the primordial devil aura first. It was very inconvenient for her to walk outside in her current state. If she couldn't control herself well when she fought, she might hurt herself. As for Mo Tiange, she didn't plan to leave before her injuries were healed. Ever since she came to Yunzhong, things happened one after another, so she didn't have much time to cultivate. After her injuries were healed, she would spend some time recuperating and stabilizing her cultivation level. Then she would go see Ling Yunhe and settle the matter regarding the art of Sunu. At that time, she would consider returning to the Celestial Pole. It had been 7 years since she left the Celestial Pole. If she spent some more time recuperating, she reckoned more than 10 years would have passed. It was really inconvenient to travel outside, especially in such a distant place. Things were different now. There was a blood oath between her and Qin Shi. 5 years ago, she was seriously injured, so presumably, Qin Shi could also feel it. However, he couldn't come for the time being, so she didn't know how to worry about him. Mo Tiange only briefly told Nia Wushang about her plans, but Nia Wushang naturally wouldn't say anything. Although the two of them had a good relationship now, it wasn't to the point where they were inseparable. Both of them were very independent cultivators with their own plans. Right now, they just happened to have the same goal. As for Nia Wushang, not to mention the fact that she was currently plagued by primordial devil aura and couldn't come out of her closed-door meditation in a short time, even if she could, she absolutely wouldn't go back to the Celestial Pole. She spent so much effort to escape from the Celestial Pole and almost died in the South Sea. Unless she became a top late-stage nascent soul cultivator one day, she wouldn't take the risk to go back. If Master Song Feng was still alive, her fate could be imagined. After a short conversation, the two of them continued to live in this cave without disturbing each other. They both did their own closed-door meditation and recuperated their own injuries. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another 5 years had passed. During these 5 years, the two of them had almost no contact with each other. It was only when the rent of the cave expired and the shopkeeper came to collect the rent that they both left the cultivation room. The shopkeeper probably already knew about the cave's stone door being broken. It was just that there were 2 core formation cultivators living here, so it wasn't convenient for him to say anything. When Nia Wushang came to collect the rent, the shopkeeper wasn't surprised at all and only asked if it needed to be repaired. Nia Wushang directly gave him a pile of spirit stones as compensation and also paid him 10 years of rent. How could the shopkeeper not feel unhappy? He hurriedly ordered people to come over and repair the stone door. In the next 2 years, he didn't come to disturb them as usual. Mo Tiange and Nia Wushang were very satisfied that the shopkeeper was so sensible. For them, having a quiet place to stay was the most important thing. 5 years later, Mo Tiange stopped cultivating and came out of the virtual sky world. Sensing her breath, the stone door of Nia Wushang's cultivation room opened automatically. After not seeing Mo Tiange for 2 years, Nia Wushang looked at Mo Tiange carefully. She was both amazed and curious. "You're recuperating. 2 years ago, I saw your injuries had just healed. How did your cultivation progress so fast?" It wasn't strange for Nia Wushang to be surprised. After she woke up, Mo Tiange's injuries hadn't completely healed. It was only after 3 years that her injuries were completely healed. But now, in just 2 years, she was already halfway to the middle stage of the core formation realm. This kind of cultivation speed was really too exaggerated. Mo Tiange simply answered, "In these 10 years, I wasn't recuperating." When her injuries weren't too serious, she began to take a lot of medicinal pills to improve her cultivation level. The reason she did this was because she was ready to come out of closed-door meditation. The stronger she was, the smoother her next business would be. There weren't many things left to do. The first thing was to see Ling Yunhe and settle the matter regarding the art of Sunu, then return to the Celestial Pole. In addition, if possible, she also planned to go to Danxia sect to inquire about some things related to Mo Yaoqing. Mo Yaoqing had passed away for more than 5,000 years. The grievances between her and Danxia sect had long been settled the moment she left Yunzhong. That being the case, Mo Tiange naturally wouldn't get entangled in this matter. The grievances of her ancestors weren't something a junior several thousand years later like her could meddle in. Besides, after so many years, Danxia sect's disciples had changed several generations, so she really didn't need to take it seriously. After Mo Tiange said that, Nia Wushang stared at her thoughtfully. After a while, she said, "You're leaving." And she came out of closed-door meditation to say goodbye to Nia Wushang. It had been more than 10 years since she left the celestial pole. It was time to go back. Nia Wushang didn't feel surprised, but she still felt a vague sense of loss. She sighed and said, "You're right. You're different from me. No matter how far you go, you still have to go back." Mo Tiange heard the melancholy in her voice, but she couldn't comfort her about this kind of thing. Although her character was compatible with Nia Wushang's, their life trajectories were completely different. In the celestial pole, she had a master, a partner, and relatives. No matter how far she was, she still had to go back. That was her route. But Nia Wushang was the opposite. She absolutely couldn't go back to the celestial pole. In Yunzhong, she had no relatives or friends, she was like a floating duckweed. The only thing that kept her going was her determination to keep cultivating. Cultivators were also people. They were more indifferent to worldly emotions than mortals, but they couldn't completely abandon them. Maybe I'll come to Yunzhong again in a few years. At that time, we'll still have a chance to see each other. After a long time, Mo Tiange only said this. Nia Wushang smiled, threw her sad mood to the back of her mind, and asked, "What's your next plan?" "I'll go to Ling Yunhe to get the reward first. If things go smoothly, I'll go back to the celestial pole." Mo Tiange didn't have anything to hide, so she told her frankly. "Right, I forgot that Ling Yunhe still owes us a debt." Nia Wushang smiled then sighed softly. "Unfortunately, I can't use the reward he promised me now." Mo Tiange never asked about this matter, so she couldn't help but feel curious. "Back then, when you accepted Ling Yunhe's invitation, what reward did you ask for?" "A sacred exorcism object." Nia Wushang didn't hesitate and told her directly. She then shook her head and smiled bitterly. "At that time, when I made this request, Ling Yunhe was very embarrassed. If he wasn't pressed for time and urgently needed help, I'm afraid he wouldn't have given it to me. But it's useless to me now even if I have it." She was already a devil cultivator now, and the primordial devil aura in her body directly occupied her meridians and dantian. It was simply impossible to use a devil exorcism object to remove the devil aura from her body. If she persisted, her cultivation level would most likely be crippled. "So, you're not going to go?" "I reckon I'll have to enter closed-door meditation for at least 10 years. Nia Wushang thought for a while then said, "How about this? If you see Ling Yunhe, tell him for me that the thing he promised me is already dispensable to me. If this thing is very important to him, then he can use something else to replace it. I don't expect it to be more precious than this sacred object, it's fine as long as he doesn't renege on his debt. If I come out of closed-door meditation, I'll go look for him." "All right," Mo Tiange readily agreed. It was just a message, so it wasn't a big deal. Nia Wushang looked at her with a complicated expression for a long time before she finally said, "I hope we're fated to meet again." After a long time, Mo Tiange smiled. "Rest assured. If I form my nascent soul in the future, I'll definitely come to Yunzhong to look for you." Chapter 422. The restaurant in Guifang City was no different from the restaurants in the Righteous Path's Immortal Cultivation City. It was also a bustling crowd of low-level cultivators, all of whom were chatting and laughing loudly, exchanging information. For most of the low-level cultivators, they couldn't enter the mountain gate, couldn't get in touch with those high-level cultivators, and couldn't get pointers. Therefore, they valued the communication between cultivators more. They could get other cultivation information from cultivators of the same level and exchange what they needed. A Immortal cultivation city needed the strength of high-level cultivators, but it also needed these low-level cultivators to be popular. Only then could it prosper. Fairy, welcome. Please take a seat here. In the restaurant, the waiter who specialized in receiving cultivators warmly greeted a female cultivator who just stepped into the restaurant and led her to a seat. Although this waiter was immortal, he had been in the outside world for a long time, so he had a good eye. When he saw this female cultivator's appearance, he knew she was a cultivator of the righteous path. He asked eagerly, "Fairy, what do you want?" "We have good spiritual tea, spiritual wine brewed from spiritual fruits, and dishes cooked from spiritual beasts. A pot of tea and a few plates of dried fruits will do." The female cultivator replied lightly. Yes, please wait a moment." The waiter bowed repeatedly. After a while, he served the spiritual tea and dried fruits. "Fairy, please enjoy. If you need anything, just call me." The female cultivator nodded, picked up the spiritual tea, and took a sip. However, she frowned slightly, as if she was not satisfied with this spiritual tea. In the infernal domain, how could a restaurant that served ordinary low-level cultivators have any good spirit tea? This restaurant was actually quite famous in Guifang City. However, in the early morning, the seats on the second floor, which was specially used to receive cultivators, were already 70% full. Seeing this female cultivator come in, the other cultivators more or less shifted their gaze to her for a while. They acted like this because there were not many female cultivators among the rogue cultivators. Moreover, this was the devil domain, and this female cultivator was a Dao cultivator. Secondly, this female cultivator's aura was not strong, but they couldn't feel her real cultivation. It was really strange. However, no matter how they looked, this female cultivator was still quietly drinking tea by herself. She lowered her head and looked at the table, as if she didn't care about the surroundings. Seeing this, the surrounding cultivators quickly resumed their conversation. Although there weren't many low-level cultivators in the demon domain, it wasn't as if there weren't any. In this restaurant alone, there were 3 to 5 of them, which wasn't considered rare. Besides, low-level cultivators like them were busy cultivating every day. How could they have the time to care about other people's business? This female cultivator was naturally Mo Tiange. After a simple farewell to Nie Wushang, she packed up her things and left the temporary cave. She had not appeared in the human world for several years. Looking at the bustling Guifang city, she could not help but want to sit in the crowd and feel the aura of the mortal world. Cultivation was a lonely thing. The higher one's cultivation, the more lonely it was. He shut himself in the abode and cultivated day and night, painstakingly comprehending the profundities. In the blink of an eye, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years passed just like that. If one didn't have a firm Tao heart, how could one persevere? Even if Mo Tiange admitted she was willing to be lonely, it was inevitable that she would feel dull and lonely after being in closed-door meditation for a long time. After sitting leisurely for a while, several cultivators of the righteous path came to strike up a conversation with her. However, Mo Tiange was not in the mood to chat with them today, so she only said a few words. Seeing that she was not in the mood to chat, the others sensibly didn't disturb her. The restaurant was quite noisy. For low-level cultivators without a sect, communicating with cultivators in the same realm was their source of information. Although they might not be prepared for what they said, Mo Tiange was very happy to hear it. While she was listening to some gossip with relish, she suddenly heard a devil cultivator at the table next to her say, fellow Taoists, before I came to Guifang City, I heard there were many cultivators with profound cultivation levels in Guifang City. I've been here for a month, but why haven't I seen a senior in the core formation realm? This cultivator's question might be very strange in other places. How could it be so easy to see a core formation cultivator? But in Guifang City, it wasn't strange at all. Guifang City was one of the biggest devil territories. Not only were there many core formation cultivators under Guifang Devil Monarch, but there were also many cultivators who settled in Guifang City. Although low-level cultivators like them couldn't chat with them, they had many opportunities to meet them. There were two people sitting at the same table with this devil cultivator. One was a youth with a knife scar on his face, and the other was a skinny old man. Upon hearing this question, the old man still drank his tea with relish, but the other youth immediately smiled and said, "Brother Yen, there's something you don't know. If you came to Guifang City on a normal day, it would be very easy for you to see a core formation senior. But now, the timing isn't right. Not to mention our Guifang City, I'm afraid the core formation seniors from other devil territories aren't in the city." Oh. The devil cultivator called Brother Yen was surprised. What timing? Did something big happen? Something big, something really big. The knife-scarred youth shook the wine cup in his hand, ate a mouthful of dishes cooked by demonic beasts, then said, "Brother Yen, I presume you haven't been to this kind of place recently, right? Not to mention our Guifang City, there's practically no devil cultivator who doesn't know about this matter." Mo Tienga, who inadvertently overheard this, couldn't help but prick up her ears. Something big happened in the devil cultivator world. What kind of thing could it be that involved so many core formation cultivators? Fellow Daoist Duan, don't keep me guessing. What's the matter? I'm always impatient. Hee hee. The knife-scarred youth chuckled. Now that he had aroused devil cultivator Yan's curiosity, he said, "Brother Yen, have you ever heard of a magic weapon called Heavenly Devil Tower?" Heavenly Devil Tower. What's that? Judging from his tone, it seems to be an extraordinary magic weapon. Mo Tienga, who didn't know much about Yunzhong, was full of doubts. Heavenly Devil Tower. Devil cultivator Yen repeated. At first, his expression was blank, but it soon turned red, and excitement appeared on his face. Heavenly Devil Tower. Tens of thousands of years ago, the most powerful magic weapon of devil paths, Heavenly Devil Venerable, the Heavenly Devil Tower? Correct. The knife-scarred youth was very satisfied that devil cultivator Yen managed to guess it right away. Aside from this Heavenly Devil Tower, what else could make those arrogant seniors care so much about it? The youth didn't finish his sentence, so devil cultivator Yen hastily asked, "What's going on?" Fellow Daoist Duan, just tell me. Let this old man tell you. The old man who hadn't spoken until now finally spoke. His cultivation level was slightly higher than the other two. He was already in the 10th layer of the aura refining realm. Judging from his age, he must have had a lot of experience. His eyes shone brightly, and it was obvious he was a shrewd person. "We have to start from 2 years ago," the old man said slowly. About 2 years ago, not only in our Guifang City, but in the entire devil cultivator world, the rumor of the Heavenly Devil Tower's reappearance spread. Fellow Daoist Yen, you know what kind of treasure the Heavenly Devil Tower is. We devil cultivators worship powerful cultivators the most, and Devil Path's Heavenly Devil Venerable was undoubtedly the most powerful devil cultivator in Yunzhong's history. The Heavenly Devil Tower in his hands was created by gathering the power of the 10 most powerful devil monarchs of the Devil Path and refining all kinds of Devil Path supreme treasures. It could be said to be the #1 magic weapon of our Devil Path, so it's also known as the Devil Path's sacred object. The old man roughly explained the origin of the Heavenly Devil Tower, which happened to resolve Mo Tienga's doubts. She had heard of Devil Venerable Sky, but she wasn't very interested in matters related to devil cultivators. She only knew that this person was publicly recognized as the strongest devil path cultivator in Yunzhong. Although he had disappeared for several tens of thousands of years, his prestige still lingered in Yunzhong. Moreover, he was the only devil path cultivator who was given the title of Devil Venerable. Judging from the old man's words, this heavenly devil tower was the most powerful magic weapon in Devil Venerable Sky's hands, and it was also known as the Devil Path's sacred object, so it should be very extraordinary. However, this Devil Venerable Sky had disappeared for several tens of thousands of years. Was this magic weapon still in good condition? As this thought crossed her mind, Mo Tiange once again recalled the Fuxing sword she accidentally obtained a few years ago. Fu Yaozi was also a cultivator from several tens of thousands of years ago. This magic weapon of his had been corroded in the devil domain for several tens of thousands of years, but it still had that kind of power. If this heavenly devil tower had been properly preserved in a specific place, it really might be in good condition. All of us aura refining cultivators heard about this, so we all thought it was just groundless rumors. Otherwise, how could we possibly know about this kind of news? Who knew that several months ago, the high-level seniors of our Guifang city went out one after another? Only then did we find out that this wasn't just a rumor. Right now, almost all the seniors in the devil cultivation world above the core formation realm are searching for this sacred object. Oh, so that's how it is. The devil cultivator surnamed Yen clicked his tongue in wonder. Legend has it that after the Devil Venerable successfully advanced to the divine transformation realm, he disappeared from the world, and the heavenly devil tower also disappeared at the same time. It's been several tens of thousands of years, but this devil path's sacred object has actually reappeared in the world. This is too miraculous. Who said it wasn't? The knife-scarred youth said while eating a dried fruit, "Unfortunately, our cultivation levels are too low. Even if the sacred object appears in the world, it has nothing to do with us." Alas, if it was several hundred years later. Even if it was several hundred years later, you still might not be able to form your gold core. Even if you formed your gold core, I'm afraid you still wouldn't be able to snatch this sacred object. The old man slowly nibbled on peanuts and said, "This time, although all the core formation seniors went out, in my opinion, only the three great devil monarchs will be able to join in the fight." The knife-scarred youth nodded in agreement. Yes. Not to mention the core formation seniors, even those nascent soul seniors with slightly weaker strength probably won't have a chance. The sacred object of our devil path will naturally fall into the hands of the strongest devil cultivators. Other people will just watch the fun. Correct. I hope our city lord can snatch the sacred object. That way, our Guifang city will become the #1 devil domain in the future. At that time, small cultivators like us will also have a lot of benefits. These devil cultivators continued to talk for a while before they changed the topic to something else. The appearance of the devil path's sacred object was naturally an extraordinary event for the entire devil cultivation world, but for small cultivators like them, it was nothing more than gossip. Mo Tiange muttered to herself for a while before she called the waiter, paid the bill and left the restaurant. On the surface, this matter seemed to have nothing to do with her. However, if she thought about it carefully, it might not necessarily be the case. The appearance of the devil path's sacred object caused turmoil in the entire devil cultivation world. In Yunzhong, although cultivators from different realms had their own countries, they all lived together. Once the devil path was in turmoil, the three realms of Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism would also be in turmoil. It seemed she had to quickly finish her business and leave Yunzhong. Chapter 423. After leaving Guifang City and northern Lin Country in a hurry, Mo Tiange entered the sphere of influence of Zhuyan sect a few days later. The northern part of eastern Tang, because it was close to northern Lin Country, had barren mountains and wild rivers, and was very desolate. Not even a few villages could be seen. When she got close to Julian's sect, there were more people. After entering Julian's sect's sphere of influence, there were even more towns and cities everywhere. Among the 5 major sects of Eastern Tang, Julian's sect and Dansha's sect were located in the north, one in the east and the other in the west. Because of the existence of these 2 sects, the surrounding area was very prosperous. Cultivation cities were everywhere, and it was many times more prosperous than the celestial pole. Along the way, Mo Tiange randomly picked a cultivation town to stay, but she found that the turmoil of Devil Path had already affected all parts of Yunzhong. Once a powerful devil cultivator obtained the sacred object of Devil Path, his strength would soar. Although the cultivators of Yunzhong coexisted peacefully, they were also in a delicate balance. If the strength of Devil Path cultivators skyrocketed, especially figures like the 3 devil monarchs, the situation in Yunzhong would certainly change. Therefore, when the sacred object of Devil Path appeared, not only did it set off a great uproar in the world of Devil Path, but other Taoist cultivators, Confucian cultivators, and Buddhist cultivators were also involved. When she returned to Eastern Tang at this time, there were almost no high-level cultivators left in the 5 major cultivation sections. Basically, all of them went out in full force. The disturbance caused by this matter in Eastern Tang was far greater than that in Guifang City. This was the sacred object of Devil Path. Devil cultivators went to fight for it for their own interests, but Taoist cultivators felt a sense of crisis. Taoist cultivators were used to them being the most numerous and powerful cultivators in Yunzhong. This time, it was possible for devil cultivators to get the sacred object of Devil Venerable. How could this be? Although Devil Venerable was powerful and had outstanding figures like the 10 devil monarchs, Taoist cultivators also had geniuses like Senior Fu Yaozi and other promising cultivators. The strength of Taoist cultivators was not weak at all. After so many years, although Taoist and Devil Path were no longer hostile, they were still unwilling to let devil cultivators steal the limelight and dominate Taoist cultivators. As for Buddhist cultivators and Confucian cultivators, they also belonged to the righteous path. It was not good for them if devil cultivators were strong, so they naturally stood on the side of Taoist cultivators. Mo Tiange couldn't help but sigh. She really didn't expect that the situation in Yunzhong would change in such a way in just a few years of seclusion. As a result, the thing she wanted to do had changed again. A few years ago, Ling Yun had promised to help her obtain the complete version of the art of Sunu. He said he'd only think of a way to get it for her, but he didn't say how long it would take or whether he'd directly give it to her. Moreover, regardless of whether Ling Yunhe had become the sect leader of Julian's sect or not, with almost all the sects mobilized, he would most likely be dragged into this matter as well. It was unknown whether he was in Julian's sect at the moment. After pondering for a while, Mo Tiange felt it was useless to think too much about it. She might as well go directly to the Ling clan in Sky Snow City to take a look and then decide what to do next. After making up her mind, she traveled day and night without stopping to rest. Soon, she arrived at Sky Snow City. She went to the Ling clan with familiarity. Coincidentally, the person who received her was the cultivator who called Ling Yunhe's second uncle, Xiao Shun. However, after 10 years, Xiao Shun had already successfully built his foundation and became a foundation-building cultivator. "Senior, it's you." Xiao Shun opened his mouth in surprise when he saw Mo Tiange being led in by the gatekeeper. Mo Tiange swept her gaze over him and immediately found that things were different now. Xiao Shun had advanced to the foundation-building realm, so his dressing and bearing were completely different from the low-level cultivator he used to be. She smiled and said, "We haven't seen each other for many years. Turns out you've successfully built your foundation. Congratulations." Xiao Shun scratched his head embarrassedly and hastily asked Mo Tiange to sit down. "Senior, please sit." The core formation elders of the Ling clan are all busy right now. Please forgive me for not being a good host. Mo Tiange waved her hand indifferently. I know. The appearance of the sacred object of the devil path has affected the whole of Yunzhong. In fact, for a big clan like the Ling clan, even if a core formation cultivator came to visit, it would be enough for a foundation building cultivator to receive them before the reason was stated. It wouldn't be considered rude. Besides, the current situation was special. According to her estimation, the Ling clan's nascent soul ancestor was most likely chasing after the Devil Realm's sacred object. There were probably only a few core formation cultivators left in the Ling clan, and they were probably all busy and didn't have time to receive her. Seeing that Mo Tiange didn't mind, Xiao Shun sighed in relief and said apologetically, "Since Senior knows the reason, I won't explain much." The servants of the Ling clan were all well trained. At this time, they had already served tea quickly. After Mo Tiange drank the tea, Xiao Shun said, "Senior, did you come to look for second uncle?" Mo Tiange put down the teacup and nodded. Yes, but I wonder if fellow Daoist Ling is in the manor or inside Juyan sect. Xiao Shun shook his head and said apologetically, "Unfortunately, second uncle went out with the ancestors several months ago. I don't know when he'll come back." Mo Tiange was stunned for a moment before she sighed. I guessed fellow Daoist Ling probably couldn't avoid the matter of the Devil Path's sacred object. I just came to ask with the slightest hope. Senior doesn't have to be so disappointed. Xiao Shun smiled and said, "Although second uncle isn't here, Junior has already been informed about Senior's matter." Oh. Mo Tiange was slightly happy. In that case, she didn't come here in vain. May I know what fellow Daoist Ling said? Xiao Shun said, "Second uncle said that Senior has already prepared your reward. However, this matter is very important, so it's inconvenient to tell him. He asked him to personally hand it over to you when he comes back." Mo Tiange was stunned. Is that so? What she wanted was the complete art of Sunu, including cultivation techniques for those in the nascent soul realm and above. Moreover, this thing was a treasure of Danxia sect, so it wasn't wrong to be so cautious. However, the emergence of the Devil Path's sacred object this time would involve a lot of cultivators. She could imagine the chaos that would ensue. How could Ling Yunhe guarantee that he'd come back alive and fulfill his promise? If Ling Yun had died on this trip, wouldn't that mean she wouldn't be able to get it? After hesitating for a while, Mo Tiange asked, "Can you contact him now?" Xiao Shun hesitated for a moment before answering, "Junior can't. However, second uncle also told me that if Senior really wants to come and look for him during this period of time, Junior can tell Senior where to find second uncle." Oh. Mo Tiange was a bit surprised. Although she knew most of the core formation cultivators in Yunzhong were involved in this matter, she never thought about asking about their whereabouts because this kind of matter was definitely a secret that couldn't be passed on. But now, from what Xiao Shun said, it seemed he could tell her. Mo Tiange pondered for a moment then asked, "Isn't this matter the sect's secret? Why can you tell me?" Xiao Shun smiled and shook his head. "Senior, it's true that this matter is confidential, but how could it be confidential when almost all the high-level cultivators in Yunzhong were involved? Senior is also a core formation cultivator, so if you really want to know, you still have a way to inquire about it. That being the case, what's wrong with me telling Senior?" What he said was true. With more people involved, even the most confidential matter wouldn't be confidential anymore. Mo Tiange smiled then asked, "Then tell me, where can I find him?" Xiao Shun smiled and looked at her. He only said 3 words, "Returning Ruined Sea." Mo Tiange was startled and frowned. Returning Ruined Sea. Correct. Xiao Shun took out a map made of animal skin from his robe and spread it on the tea table. This was a simple map of Yunzhong. Only the outline of Yunzhong's continent was drawn, but the internal sea was extremely detailed. Every island and every part of the sea was clearly shown. Senior, if you want to find second uncle, you should go to this island. Mo Tiange looked at the island next to the returning ruin Si Shaoshan pointed at and asked, "Where is he?" Shaoshan shook his head. "It's just that second uncle told me to do so." In Junior's opinion, Senior's chances of running into second uncle here aren't high. Mo Tiange was silent. This island was obviously a place where Julian sect cultivators passed by. Ling Yunhe had something to do, and it was a big matter that involved the whole sect, so how could he wait for her here? Besides, he also didn't know she would really come to the Ling clan at this time. Therefore, this was only a possibility. She thought for a while then asked, what if things went smoothly? Did he say when he would come back? Shaoshan was silent for a while then shook his head softly with a melancholy expression. I don't know. Since Senior already knows what happened, you must also understand that this is a great turmoil that affects the whole of Yunzhong. No one knows whether Senior can come back alive or not. Mo Tiange was silent for a while then pointed at the map on the tea table. Can you give this to me? Shaoshan regained his composure and said with a smile, of course. He then rolled up the map and offered it with both hands. Mo Tiange accepted it then said, thank you for passing the message, but I haven't decided whether to go or not. How about this? If fellow Daoist Ling comes back and I haven't gone to look for him, please tell him I'll find a suitable time to visit him. Shaoshan nodded with a smile. I'll definitely pass on Senior's message. Mo Tiange said, fellow Daoist Tianken also asked me to pass on a message. Right now, she has something important to do, so the time of her visit is uncertain. Maybe 3 to 5 years, maybe 10 to 20 years. When she's free, she'll come to look for him. Shaoshan nodded cautiously. I understand. Mo Tiange hesitated for a while, but in the end, she didn't tell Shaoshan about exchanging the reward. This matter was too secretive. She'd better tell him when she saw Ling Yunhe. Even if she didn't pass on the message, Nia Wushang could still tell him herself. After she finished telling him about the main matter, Mo Tiange wasn't in a hurry to leave. She chatted with Shaoshan and asked him about what happened that year. After obtaining the carefree fruit, Ling Yun had successfully seized the position of Julian sect's head. When he came back with injuries, Ling clan's nascent soul ancestor was furious. Afterward, Julian's sect was in turmoil. After a series of struggles, Ling Yunhe successfully succeeded the position of sect head, and this matter finally came to an end. Although Shaoshan didn't explain this matter very clearly, Mo Tiange could guess it must have something to do with Ling Yunfei. Back then, Ling Yunfei was a disciple of Ling clan, but he plotted against Ling Yunhe, so he must have something to rely on. And this reliance definitely wasn't Ling clan's ancestor. With this inference, it would be strange if Ling Yunhe didn't get angry. His own core formation descendant was actually bribed by someone else. How could he tolerate it? It could be said that Ling Yunhe's ascension to the position of sect head was a sign that one of Julian sect's factions was losing power. Of course, this was Julian sect's internal affairs. Mo Tiange only asked about it briefly and didn't express too much curiosity. For her, the problem now was whether she should look for Ling Yunhe and settle this matter as soon as possible or stay out of it and wait here. Chapter 424. The turmoil caused by the sacred object of the demonic path was even beyond Mo Tiange's imagination. After leaving the Ling clan, she didn't immediately go to the Sea of Returning Ruins to look for Ling Yunhe. Instead, she temporarily settled down in Sky Snow City. During this time, she saw many core formation cultivators passing through Sky Snow City and hurrying south. Some of these cultivators were in groups while some were alone. There were probably cultivators from both sects and individual cultivators. It seemed that this sacred object of the demonic path was extremely important to the cultivators in Yunzhong. Realizing this, Mo Tiange had to inquire about some information. She was puzzled. No matter how powerful this sacred object of the demonic path was, it was only a magic weapon. There was no lack of powerful cultivators in Yunzhong, so why did they all flock to this magic weapon? She didn't understand until she went to the tea house in Sky Snow City. Ore refining and foundation building cultivators couldn't intervene in such a big matter, but that didn't stop them from talking excitedly. From these people, Mo Tiange learned that there were some ancient legends circulating in Yunzhong. 100,000 years ago was the most prosperous period of the cultivation world in Yunzhong. Whether it was the righteous path or the demonic path, they all produced talented people and prospered. At that time, several legendary figures appeared among the cultivators of each path. The first was Fu Yaozi, the second was Sky Luminous Demon Venerable, the third was Juyan Sect's founder, Saint Gui Zhen, the fourth was Confucian Saint Zhou Fuzi, and the fifth was Buddhist Master Hui Yin. These 5 figures were no more than 1,000 years apart in age and were people of the same generation. Because they were far more powerful than their peers, they were called the 5 saints by the cultivators in Yunzhong. Among the 5 saints, Fu Yaozi was the most unique one. He didn't belong to any sect, but he was so powerful that he was still called the number 1 person in Yunzhong's history. The other 4 were representatives of the demonic path, Taoist path, Confucian path, and Buddhist path. Each of them had disciples. There were also rumors about the 5 saints in Yunzhong. It was said that the 5 saints all advanced to the soul formation realm and left the world. Before they left, they each left treasures in the world. These were the 5 sacred objects in Yunzhong. Among these 5 sacred objects, Sky Luminous Demon Venerable naturally had the Heavenly Demon Tower and Master Hui Yin's inescapable net. As for the other 3, people only knew they had treasures but didn't know their names. However, other than Fu Yaozi, Saint Gui Zhen, Master Zhou, and Master Hui Yin all had disciples that were passed down from generation to generation. It was highly likely that they were in the hands of their disciples. As for the Sky Luminous Demon Exalted, after he passed away, the 10 demon monarchs were suppressed by Fu Yaozi alone, and the Heavenly Demon Tower eventually disappeared. Because of this, after so many years, although there was no lack of nascent soul cultivators in the Devil Dao, they were all suppressed by the other Daos. Mo Tiange left the tea house and sat inside the virtual sky world, lost in thought. Inescapable net, why did it sound so familiar? After thinking for a while, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. 10 years ago, when she first arrived at Sky Snow City, she was robbed by 2 foundation building cultivators. At that time, she casually took their magic weapon into her pocket. That magic weapon was called the inescapable net by them. With this thought in mind, Mo Tiange put her hand into her Qianquan bag. After fumbling around for a long time, she finally took out a golden net. It was unknown what the net was made of, but it was completely golden and light as if it was weightless. It was also infused with a strange spiritual energy. After looking at it for a while, Mo Tiange couldn't see anything unusual about it. Treasures always had an imposing manner. For example, the Fuxing sword she obtained. Although it had been corroded by devil aura and was covered in rust, it was still shockingly powerful. However, she couldn't see any power from the golden net in front of her. If there was anything unusual about it, it would be that it looked extremely exquisite and the spiritual energy on it was something she still couldn't see through with her cultivation level. She carefully recalled what happened 10 years ago. One of the 2 people died under her hands, and the other one she found pleasing to the eye, so she let him go. That person once admitted that they were indeed Buddhist cultivators. But the problem was, they were only 2 foundation building cultivators, so how could they possibly have a Buddhist holy object? A Devil Dao holy object was enough to make all of Yunzhong restless, so a Buddhist holy object should be kept in the hands of a great Buddhist cultivator. Could it be that this thing was an imitation of the real inescapable net? This wasn't impossible. Many famous psychic magic weapons had imitations in the world. For example, the square seal in her hand was actually made by Lord Daoist Jinghe based on Lord Daoist Jinyang's natal magic weapon. Therefore, although it couldn't be considered a top-grade magic weapon, it was still very powerful. After thinking for a while, Mo Tiange still couldn't think of a reason, so she shook her head and put the golden net back into her Qianquan bag. She wasn't a cultivator from Yunzhong, so even if this matter made all the cultivators in Yunzhong crazy, she wouldn't feel excited at all. There were so many high-level cultivators, including many late-stage, nascent soul cultivators with great divine power. Even if she went there, she would only be watching the fun. Besides, she didn't covet the Devil Dao's holy object. Just like that, she stayed in Sky Snow City for another month. During this time, rumors spread like wildfire in Sky Snow City. Rumors spread like wildfire in the tea houses, but no one knew whether it was true or false. Cultivators of various paths fought each other in the Sea of Returning Ruins and more than half of them died or were injured. They found a spatial crack in the Sea of Returning Ruins. They said the Heavenly Devil Tower had actually fallen into someone else's hands. The news was very messy. Mo Tiange was confused, so she simply found a time to go see Xiaoshan. Xiaoshan was very enthusiastic about her visit and told her everything he knew about the matter. From Xiaoshan, Mo Tiange heard another version of the legend. Senior, although the legend of the 5 saints has been circulating in Yunzhong for a long time, it's been several tens of thousands of years, and there are many mistakes in it. Even disciples of the 5 saints like us can't tell whether it's true or false. Hearing Xiaoshan's words, Mo Tiange said, "So, what I heard should be false." Xiaoshan hesitated for a while then shook his head. It's not completely false. The 5 saints themselves and the 5 holy objects they left behind should all be true. But there were others that were fake. For example, only Demon Venerable Skylight and Fu Yaozi can be confirmed to have reached the deification realm. The others, including our Juyan sect Saint Guizhen, are only rumored to have reached the deification realm. As for whether they've reached the deification realm or not, we, the descendants, don't know. Mo Tiange was surprised. Why is that? Saint Guizhen is the founder of your sect. Don't tell me there's no record of him in the sect. Xiaoshan shook his head. It's been too long. How could I remember it in such detail? Besides, I'm just an ordinary disciple. Although I'm favored by second uncle and know a bit more than others, there are some things that a disciple like me can't know. Mo Tiange found it reasonable, so she nodded. There were some secrets that only a few people could know. If other people's ranks weren't high enough, they wouldn't know no matter how close they were. However, there's one thing we can be sure of. The 5 saints did pass down a set of magic weapons with amazing divine powers, Xiaoshan said. Then he hesitated for a moment and said, "Senior, I can't be sure if the following things are true or false. They're just rumors I heard in the sect. If they're wrong, don't blame me." Mo Tiange smiled and said, "How can you be sure there's nothing wrong with what happened 100,000 years ago? You don't need to worry. I was the one who wanted to ask you for information, so how could I blame you?" When Xiaoshan heard this, he smiled and scratched his head in embarrassment. Although these things couldn't be regarded as the sect secrets, he was willing to talk about them because this Senior Qin was good-natured and they got along very well. Senior must want to know why the 5 saints passed down their magic weapons together, right? Xiaoshan said. Mo Tiange nodded. That's exactly what I don't understand. It was normal to pass down magic weapons to later generations, but why did the rumors emphasize an extremely powerful magic weapon and called a holy object? It was indeed a bit unusual to call 5 magic weapons a holy object. Xiao Shun said, regarding this matter, this junior has heard of another saying in the sect. Xiao Shun then began to explain slowly. It was said that 100,000 years ago, after a tsunami in the Sea of Returning Ruins, a spatial rift suddenly appeared. Through this spatial rift, one could enter a wonderful space. No one knew when this space had been left behind, but it was filled with the aura of the distant past and was extremely wonderful. The appearance of such a space naturally attracted the attention of cultivators. Almost all the cultivators in Yunzhong were involved in it. After a struggle, the ones who finally entered this space were the 5 top cultivators, the 5 saints. As for what the 5 saints obtained in this space, no one knew. After they returned, they kept this experience a secret. Even their closest disciples didn't know about it. After the 5 saints passed away, there was a secret rumor among the cultivators in Yunzhong that the 5 saints obtained a distant past spiritual treasure, so they rushed into the deification realm in one fell swoop. Of course, this was only a rumor. What the 5 saints obtained in this wonderful place was all speculation. After the 5 saints left, no one could find this space again. Some people said that this spatial rift was originally unstable, so after the 5 saints came out, it collapsed on its own. Some people also said the 5 saints hid it. Which is the answer? Does Senior want to guess? At this point, Xiao Shun looked at Mo Tiange with a meaningful smile. Seeing his expression, Mo Tiange smiled faintly and said, "Of course it's the second one. Otherwise, why would you mention these 5 holy artifacts?" Xiao Shun nodded. "Correct. Among our group, it's the second answer. The 5 saints worked together to seal this wonderful space. Unless one knows the method to open it, no one can enter." At this point, he looked at Mo Tiange. Senior should have guessed it, right? The 5 magic weapons left behind are said to be the keys to this mysterious space. I see. If this was the case, it could explain why the 5 saints passed down these 5 holy artifacts. In fact, whether they were powerful or not was secondary. What was important was that these 5 holy artifacts could open that wonderful space. However, Xiao Shun emphasized, this matter is only a rumor. As for what the truth is, no one knows for a long time. Even if someone knows, there's no way to prove it. Because aside from the Heavenly Demon Tower and the Inescapable Net, only a few people know what the other 3 holy artifacts are. Oh. Could it be that you also don't know what your Julian sect's founder passed down? I don't know. Xiao Shun shook his head decisively. Therefore, whether this rumor is true or false, Junior also doesn't know. Senior should just take it as gossip and listen to it. Mo Tiange nodded to show that she understood. She then said, in that case, the reason why so many cultivators from Yunzhong rushed to the Heavenly Demon Tower wasn't only because they were afraid devil cultivators would obtain it and greatly increase their power, but also because of this rumor. Probably. Xiao Shun didn't give a definite answer. I don't know about the rumors in other cultivation groups. Mo Tiange thought for a while, then stood up with a smile. I understand. Thank you for telling me this. Whether it's true or false, I'll just take it as an interesting story. Chapter 425. After hearing about the 5 saints from Xiao Shun, Mo Tiange reconsidered her decision. Obviously, the storm caused by the Heavenly Demon Tower couldn't be quelled in a short time. These days, she found that more and more cultivators went to Returning Ruined Sea in Sky Snow City. Not only cultivators in the core formation realm and above, but also foundation building and aura refining cultivators. Although they knew they had no hope, they couldn't help but go and watch the fun. Maybe they could really get something good. Seeing that Yunjong was turning upside down, Mo Tiange felt more and more uneasy. Although the returning ruined sea was located to the south of Yunjong, tens of thousands of miles away from here, and no matter how fierce the battle was, it wouldn't affect Sky Snow City, but with so many cultivators involved, it was a sign of great turmoil. After all, those cultivators in returning ruined sea would eventually return to their respective cultivation groups. How could they let go of the enmity they formed in returning ruined sea? If a fight really broke out, the whole of Yunjong would be involved. Thinking of this, Mo Tiange raised her eyebrows. She didn't covet any sacred object, and she only stayed in the clouds because she wanted to finish what she had to do. But in the current situation, if she stayed in the clouds for too long, she would probably be involuntarily dragged into it. What should I do? It wasn't a good idea to look for the cloud-soaring crane. Returning ruined sea was now a troublesome place. Should I wait here? Unless she closed her door and wholeheartedly cultivated, once Yunjong was in chaos, it would be very troublesome for her. Besides, she had a hunch that since the Heavenly Demon Tower appeared, what about the other holy relic? If she wasn't careful, the turmoil brought by these holy relic might affect Yunjong for years, decades, or even centuries. If that was the case, there was no need for her to stay in Yunjong anymore. After a short consideration, Mo Tiange finally decided to give up on the art of Sunu and return to the Celestial Pole. She had already gone through the passage between the Celestial Pole and Yunjong once, so it wouldn't be difficult to go through it again. She just needed to spend a little more time, and that half a year wasn't a long time for cultivators. That being the case, why should she stay in Yunjong and waste time? Since he couldn't obtain the art of Sunu in such a short time, he might as well return to the Celestial Pole and come back after 10 or 20 years. Once she made up her mind, she acted. The next day, Mo Tiange sent a message to Xiao Shun, saying she had other important matters to attend to and had to leave for a while. It might be a long time before she came back. She told Xiao Shun to tell Ling Yunhe that she would take advantage of the transporting formation to directly go to North Pole Island. Yunjong's teleportation formation was very common, but it was only available in large cities like Sky Snow City, where people came and went. In the past few days, there had been a continuous stream of people being teleported to the big cities in the south, but the North Pole Island's transporting formation, which used to be bustling with activity, was now empty. Upon hearing that Mo Tiange wasn't going to a big city in the south, the cultivator guarding the transporting formation was very surprised. However, due to his limited cultivation level, he didn't dare to ask too much. After Mo Tiange paid the fee, he respectfully activated the transporting formation and sent her away. The transporting formation was activated. A moment later, the light dispersed. When Mo Tiange opened her eyes, she was already inside Tianyan Sek's Jade Qilin Pavilion on North Pole Island. Seeing that it was a core formation cultivator who came down from the teleportation array, the cultivator guarding the teleportation array was very surprised. The leading foundation building cultivator hesitated for a moment before he stepped forward to greet her. "Senior, welcome to North Pole Island." Since the other party was so polite, Mo Tiange also smiled and nodded in response. Seeing her kind attitude, this person also had a good impression of her. He asked politely, "May I ask if this is Senior's first time coming to North Pole Island? Are you hunting demonic beasts or visiting friends? If there's anything I can help you with, please don't hesitate to ask." Mo Tiange shook her head softly. "I've been to North Pole Island before, so there's no need to do this." "I see." Junior was too meddlesome. The foundation building cultivator said, but he still didn't retreat. After a moment of hesitation, he summoned up his courage and asked, "Please forgive Junior for being rude, but in recent months, very few cultivators have come to North Pole Island, let alone a core formation cultivator like Senior. Why did Senior choose to come at this time?" Seeing Tiange raising her brows, seemingly displeased, the foundation building cultivator hastily said, "Junior was just curious. If Senior finds it inconvenient, you can just pretend I didn't ask." It wasn't convenient for Tiange to tell others the purpose of her trip. Since this foundation building cultivator was tactful, she didn't say much. She only said, "It's indeed inconvenient to say. Can I leave now?" The foundation building cultivator hastily took a step back. "Of course. Senior, please do as you please." Tiange didn't say much and left Jade Chelan Pavilion. When her figure disappeared, the aura refining girl following the foundation building cultivator asked curiously, "Master, most of the core formation grandmasters in our group have gone to returning Ruined Sea, so why did this senior come to North Pole Island?" The foundation building cultivator stared at the place where Tiange's figure disappeared. He shook his head and said, "It's precisely because of this that I feel this senior is a smart person." "Oh." The girl was puzzled. "Why?" The foundation building cultivator looked at his young disciple and said with a smile, "Think about it. With so many high-level seniors rushing to returning Ruined Sea, how many of them are in the late stage of the nascent soul realm? In the end, the ones who get what they want are only those top cultivators. Core formation cultivators won't get any benefits unless they're extremely lucky. The biggest possibility is that not only will they not get any benefits, but they'll also suffer losses." Ah! The girls suddenly understood. So it's because of this that the ones staying in our group are all young and promising core formation grandmasters? The foundation building cultivator nodded. The girl tilted her head and said doubtfully, "That being the case, why do the two nascent soul grandmasters want to take those core formation grandmasters with them? Wouldn't it be better if we didn't care about this matter?" The foundation building cultivator shook his head and said with a smile, "Everything in the world can be measured by benefits. For the sake of benefits, we naturally have to take big risks. Think about it, the 5 sacred objects left by the 5 sages are related to that legend. Advancing to the deification realm, this is something all cultivators in the world yearn for. Many people are willing to gamble for the sake of advancing to the core formation realm, let alone the deification realm. Even if this is only a legend, it's still worth risking their lives." But, without waiting for the girl to finish, the foundation building cultivator said, "There are only 2 kinds of people who can ignore this kind of legend. First, people like us simply have no hope. Second, they themselves have extremely high aptitudes and have a great chance of advancing to the nascent soul realm, so there's no need to gamble." At this point, the foundation building cultivator shook his head and said with a sigh, "It seems this senior isn't only smart, but her aptitude also isn't bad." Tiange naturally had no idea what these juniors were talking about. As soon as she walked out of Jade Chelan Pavilion, she discovered that North Pole Island was a lot more deserted than usual. The peddlers on the street were few and far between, and the people who set up stalls were all listless. It seemed the emergence of the sacred objects this time didn't only affect high-level cultivators, but low-level cultivators also weren't spared. Not to mention the gossips in Sky Snow City every day, even North Pole Island, an isolated island in the sea far away from Yunzhong continent, also had a sharp decline in the flow of people and business was bleak. Tiange shook her head then suddenly released her divine sense. After confirming that there was nothing suspicious about her surroundings, she leaped up and flew towards the southern end of North Pole Island. North Pole Island wasn't very big. After a while, Tiange already reached the seaside. She was about to leap up and cross the shallow strait to go to South Pole Island, but in the next second, her footsteps stopped, and her expression changed. She stood in midair, dumbfounded. As far as she could see, there was an endless ocean in front of her, not a strait that was less than 2 miles long, and there was no trace of South Pole Island. What's going on? After being dumbfounded for a while, Emotianga exhaled and continued to fly south. She couldn't be mistaken about this direction. South Pole Island was in this direction, so how could it possibly disappear? Could it be that it was blocked by something? Emotianga flew to the sky above the original South Pole Island and circled around, but she didn't find anything. The seawater was still seawater, as if there had never been an island here. How could this be? She muttered to herself. With her current cultivation level, she could see that there was nothing strange in the vicinity. It shouldn't be something like an illusory formation covering the island. But where did South Pole Island go? After thinking for a while, Emotianga still didn't understand what happened, so she turned around and flew back to North Pole Island, heading towards the town on the island. Little brother. As soon as she entered the town, Emotianga called out to a teenager who was soliciting business. This teenager should be a broker. Upon hearing her call, he turned to look at her and immediately showed an attentive smile. Senior, what can I do for you? Whether it's looking for someone or asking for directions, buying things, or staying at an inn, I can help you. Emotianga wasn't in the mood to chat with him, so she said directly, I want to inquire about a piece of information. That's not a problem. Senior, please tell me. I grew up here, so there's nothing I don't know about North Pole Island. Emotianga ignored the teenager's bragging and asked, Then do you know that there's a South Pole Island south of North Pole Island? Ah. Upon hearing this, the teenager looked at her a few more times and finally said, Senior is right. There's indeed a South Pole Island south of our North Pole Island. But that island is very small and has nothing good, so basically no one goes there. Outsiders almost don't know about it. What do you mean? Emotianga was sensitive to this word. What do you mean? The teenager said, Senior doesn't know, but there's a small volcano on South Pole Island. South Pole Island appeared because of the volcano's eruption. However, the volcano hasn't moved for many years, so many people have forgotten about it. But 3 years ago, that volcano suddenly erupted, and then South Pole Island sank. Sank. Emotianga's expression changed greatly. She knew there was a volcano on South Pole Island, but she didn't expect the volcano would actually erupt and sink South Pole Island. Did that mean South Pole Island no longer existed? What about the passage? Did it also not exist? Speaking of which, this incident 3 years ago scared a lot of people. It said that some cultivators escaped from South Pole Island, and the mortals sank along with South Pole Island. Fortunately, that volcano was only a small one, so it didn't affect North Pole Island. At this point, the teenager carefully looked at Emotianga. Senior, are you going to South Pole Island to look for someone? If you're looking for those cultivators, I can help you inquire about them. They should still be alive. After a long time, Emotianga shook her head blankly. She casually threw him several spirit stones, then turned around and left. She didn't care about the people on South Pole Island, but if South Pole Island sank, how could she go back? Chapter 426. Emotianga stood in the air above the sea and silently gazed at the vast ocean below. This was where the South Pole Island used to be, but now, there was no trace of the island at all, not even a reef. In the vast sea, there were many miraculous things. It was normal for islands to disappear. Some islands disappeared overnight, while others suddenly reappeared. Like the South Pole Island, which appeared and disappeared because of a volcano many years ago, it wasn't strange at all. However, what happened to the other islands had nothing to do with Emotianga. This South Pole Island, on the other hand, was the link between the Celestial Pole and Yunzhong. The South Pole Island had disappeared, and the passage was gone. How could they go back to the Celestial Pole? Mo Tiange didn't know that ever since she heard this news, she had been at a loss for several days. There was no doubt that he had to return to the celestial pole. She wasn't Nie Wuxiang. She had a master, relatives, and lover in the celestial pole, so how could she cast them aside as if they had nothing? However, how could they go back to the celestial pole? The South Pole Island had disappeared, and the passage no longer existed. Didn't that mean he had to cross the South Sea like Nie Wuxiang? However, even nascent soul cultivators couldn't guarantee their safety in crossing the South Sea. Could it be that she was hoping to have the same luck as Nie Wuxiang? Luck was luck because it didn't necessarily come. If she saw Nie Wuxiang safely crossing the South Sea and rashly tried it, it would be too risky. She wanted to return to the celestial pole, but she absolutely didn't want to risk her life like this. After thinking for a while, Mo Tiange heaved a sigh and untied the spiritual beast pouch tied around her waist. Master. Lil Fan's cyan body came out of the spirit beast bag. It was a sea beast. As soon as it came out of the spirit beast bag, it keenly smelled the scent of the sea and was overjoyed. Master, where is this? Mo Tiange gently patted its head and said, Xiaofan, this is where we came from, remember? Ha! Yifan blinked her eyes in confusion. Where did you come from? Mo Tiange said, it's the place where we came to Yunzhong through the underground sewer. Upon hearing what she said, Yifan quickly understood and said in amazement, Master, you mean, it turned its head to look around, but all it saw was the vast sea and the North Pole Island not far away. Where's that hot spring? The island disappeared. Mo Tiange nodded. Lil Fan lived in the sea all year round, so it was easy for it to understand the disappearance of the island. What should we do? Yifan wagged her tail and jumped around her. Can't we go back? Can't I go to Donghai in the future? Would I never see Grandpa again? No, I don't want it. Master, what should I do? Looking at the extremely anxious Xiaofan, Mo Tiange smiled bitterly. How would she know what to do? This kind of thing was beyond a human's ability. Go down and take a look. After a while, she said, I wonder if this island has sunk to the bottom of the sea. Go down and see if the passage is still there. Yes. Hearing her words, Yifan was overjoyed. How could I forget? The island sank. Maybe it's just this part of the passage that's broken. Maybe it can be reopened. Master, I'm going. After saying that, Yifan hurriedly dove down, and with a walla sound, it drilled into the sea. With a flick of its cyan tail, it swiftly dived down. Mo Tiange was left standing in the sea breeze, still speechless. Although she let Yifan go down to find the passage, she actually did not have much hope in her heart. What happened in the vast sea was beyond the reach of a human's ability. That passage led to the bottom of the sea. How could an island be destroyed by a volcanic eruption? She was afraid that the lava would pour back into the passage when it erupted and completely block it. If this was on land, it would be fine. At worst, she could break mountains and rocks and search slowly. But this was the sea. Even if she was a high-level cultivator and could dive into the sea for a short time, she could not open a passage at the bottom of the sea. The reason why she let Yifan go down to look for the passage was that she was unwilling to give up. What if she was lucky and the passage could be used as long as it was slightly cleaned? Holding this kind of hope, Mo Tiange waited silently. 1 hour, 4 hours. 1 day, 2 days, Yifan never came up. Mo Tiange was not worried that something might happen to it. They had a spiritual beast contract. If something happened to Yifan, she would sense it more or less. Besides, Yifan was a sea dragon. This sea area was so close to the North Pole Island, so there would be no high-level sea beasts. How could those low-level sea beasts be a match for a sea dragon? Maybe Yifan was unwilling to give up, so it kept looking for it. On the third day, the sea finally fluctuated. With a splash, Yifan came out of the sea. Master. Seeing Mo Tiange, Yifan approached her with grievance and rubbed its head against her arm. Seeing Yifan's depressed look, Mo Tiange had already guessed the result. Fortunately, she was mentally prepared. She just sighed and stroked its head. Let's think of another way. Yifan had been with Mo Tiange for more than 10 years. In the beginning, it only trusted her because of the spiritual beast contract. But after so many years, it ate so many medicinal pills from her and fought side by side with her, this trust had become trust. It believed that its master must have a way to solve it. Sitting cross-legged in the air, Mo Tiange had no intention of leaving, so Yifan also stayed motionless beside her. After thinking for a while, Mo Tiange opened another spiritual beast bag. This time, it was Fei Fei that came out. Where is this? As soon as it came out of the spiritual beast bag, the sea breeze blew on its body. Fei Fei shivered and smoothed its fur. Ah, the sea! Although Fei Fei wasn't a sea beast, it also lived on an island in the East Sea. Seeing the sea, it was very happy. Master, where is this? Since its awakening, Mo Tiange hadn't seen Fei Fei so cheerful and childish. Although she was very annoyed, she couldn't help but raise the corner of her mouth and show a little smile. She stroked Fei Fei's smooth fur and said, Fei Fei, we can't go back. Ha! Fei Fei was happy, but when it suddenly heard this, it blinked its eyes in confusion. Mo Tiange said, the passage we used to come from the celestial pole collapsed, so we can't go back the way we came. Oh. Upon hearing this, Fei Fei just responded and said indifferently, if you don't want to go back, then don't go back. It's all so good here. It wasn't like Xiaofan, who had elders and relatives and was no different from humans. It was captured and became a spiritual beast as soon as it was born, so it had no concept of its hometown and no nostalgia for the celestial pole. As long as the virtual sky world was still there, going back or not wasn't important to it at all. Based on Fei Fei's tone, if it wasn't because she was powerless to get angry, Mo Tiange really wanted to throw it down from here. Ever since its awakening, this guy only knew how to annoy people. Don't go back. That's easy for you to say. Not to mention anything else, my sea of knowledge was once imprinted by a top cultivator. If I don't do what he asked me to do within 200 years and let him remove the imprint for me, I can only live for 200 years. Mo Tiange frowned. Now, I only have about 120 years left. Ha! Fei Fei blinked. This happened before the two of them formed a spiritual beast contract, so it naturally didn't know about it. Don't say this has nothing to do with you. Mo Tiange gave it a cold look. If I die, the virtual sky world will become an ownerless object. Either you cultivate inside until you reach the realm of void treading or you wait for the next master to recognize you as its master. However, I remember you said that although you ancient divine beasts are powerful, you don't know much about techniques like void treading. In addition, by the way, I can make the virtual sky world recognize me as its master because I have the spiritual roots of the origin. Think about it, when the next spiritual roots of the origin appears, happens to find the virtual sky world, and it also recognizes me as its master, how long will it take? Fei Fei was speechless for a while. Then, it immediately changed its attitude and wagged its tail to curry favor. Okay, I understand. You must find a way to go back within these 120 years, right? Even earlier. Mo Tiange lowered her head and muttered to herself. After a long time, she sighed and said, "That won't be easy." Although she'd already told Qin about this matter and she believed he'd find a way to find clues, how could it be easy to find the remains of a cultivator who died 5,000 years ago? Besides, Wanderer Ziwei's character was quite strange. After thinking for a long time, Mo Tiange still couldn't think of a good way. She rubbed her brows and muttered to herself, "Find a way to the celestial pole. Where should I start?" Feifei blinked and said, "Don't tell me the cultivators in Yunzhong have never been to the celestial pole." "Of course they have," Mo Tiange said. "But, as far as I know, the cultivators in Yunzhong who have been to the celestial pole are all nascent soul cultivators, for example, Zhong Muling and Yuan Bao. Since they could advance to the deification realm, they were naturally very powerful nascent soul cultivators. In addition, Martial Uncle Zhenyang said he once met a cultivator in Yunzhong who crossed the South Sea. That cultivator was in the early stage of the nascent soul realm, but he had a wonderful escape technique." Aside from this passage, Mo Tiange wasn't sure whether there was a shortcut from Yunzhong to the celestial pole. Even if there was, it would probably be very secretive. There was also an obvious path, crossing the South Sea. The danger of crossing the South Sea didn't need to be mentioned, but if they couldn't find any other way, this was the only choice. "Since they're both nascent soul cultivators, Master, you should also cultivate to the nascent soul realm. 120 years should be easy for you, right?" Feifei said casually. This time, Mo Tiange didn't glare at it. She muttered, "Yes, I must cultivate to the nascent soul realm to cross the South Sea. I can't be sure whether I can find another way or not. That being the case, I must be prepared to cross the South Sea." At this thought, her eyes shone with determination. 120 years was indeed enough for her to advance to the nascent soul realm or even the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. During this time, on one hand, she had to improve her strength as much as possible to prepare for crossing the South Sea. On the other hand, she had to find a way to find a shortcut to the celestial pole. Having made up her mind, Mo Tiange called the two spiritual beasts. "Enter the spiritual beast bag. Let's go." "Ha!" Feifei wagged its tail in confusion. "Where are we going?" "To enter closed-door meditation, of course," Mo Tiange said. "Even if we can't find another way, as long as I advance to the nascent soul realm, there'll be hope to cross the South Sea." Chapter 427. It's really not easy to subdue this primordial devil aura. Nia Wushang sighed and opened her eyes. Mo Tiange had been gone for some time, but she was still in closed-door meditation every day, working hard to subdue this primordial devil aura. However, from the time she regained consciousness 5 years ago until now, the amount of primordial devil aura she subdued was pitifully small. At this rate, she estimated her closed-door meditation would last for more than 100 years. It wasn't that she couldn't bear loneliness. Living with someone like Master Song Feng for more than 100 years, what else couldn't she endure? However, as long as she didn't solve this problem, she couldn't feel at ease. Is there any way to shorten this time? Nia Wushang thought silently. Suddenly, she sensed something, stood up, walked out of the cultivation room, and opened the stone door of the cave. "I'm back again." Mo Tiange stood outside the cave, seemingly about to send her a message, but when she saw her, she shrugged helplessly. Nia Wushang was surprised. "Didn't you go to see Ling Yunhe? Are you done? Do I look like I'm done?" She sighed and walked into the cave. "You don't mind if I continue to live here, do you?" Nia Wushang was the one who paid the rent last time. "Whatever," Nia Wushang said, closed the stone door, opened the restriction, and asked, "What's going on?" After tidying up her clothes, pouring tea, and sitting down at the stone table, Mo Tiange said, "I can't go back." "Ha!" Nia Wushang was stunned and puzzled. What do you mean? I can't go back to the celestial pole, Mo Tiange said. Nia Wuxiang was stunned for a long time before she realized what she meant. She said incredulously, "You mean the way you came here is blocked?" Mo Tiange didn't tell Nia Wuxiang in detail how she came to the celestial pole. Nia Wuxiang also knew this kind of thing was mostly a secret, so she didn't ask. Although she didn't know the inside story, she guessed Mo Tiange's road must be very safe since she didn't take it seriously. But now Mo Tiange actually said she couldn't go back. Since the passage had disappeared, it couldn't be considered a secret. Mo Tiange simply told her about the road and the disappearance of the South Pole Island in detail. After Mo Tiange finished speaking, Nia Wuxiang was speechless for a long time. The passage that had existed for 5,000 years actually collapsed a few years after she came to Yunzhong. What else could she say? This was already bad luck to a certain extent. A good while later, Nia Wuxiang asked, "Then what do you plan to do now?" Mo Tiange smiled bitterly. "What else can we do? We can only find another way. We can't just stay in Yunzhong. And, you're not me." Nia Wuxiang pondered for a moment. "If you can't find it, are you planning to cross the South Sea?" "Yes. That's why I came back to find you. Firstly, if you want to cross the South Sea, you'll need to be stronger. Secondly, you've done this before. Let me ask you about your experience." Without hesitation, Nia Wuxiang said, "The reason why I was able to reach Yunzhong safely was because of luck and the treasures I stole from Master. To tell you the truth, luck played a big role in this. If one could safely cross the South China Sea by relying on a magic weapon, how could Yunzhong and the Celestial Pole not have any contact for so many years? However, if you need it, I can lend you that magic weapon." Mo Tiange was stunned. This. She came to ask Nia Wuxiang about her experience crossing the South China Sea, but she never thought she would be willing to lend her magic weapon. Magic weapons were cultivators' most precious and private things. Even good friends wouldn't lend them to each other. Moreover, since Nia Wuxiang relied on this magic weapon to safely reach Yunzhong, it showed that this thing was very powerful and was definitely an extremely precious top-grade magic weapon. The most important thing was that after she returned to the Celestial Pole, she didn't know whether she would come back to Yunzhong again. If she didn't come back, she wouldn't be able to return it. Seeing her expression, Nia Wuxiang already understood what she was thinking. She said faintly, "You don't need to think too much. This thing may be very powerful, but it's useless to me now." After a pause, she said, "Let's talk about it again when you're really going to cross the South China Sea. What about the cloud-soaring crane? You didn't finish it, but did he deny it?" "I didn't see him." Mo Tiange looked at Nia Wuxiang and smiled bitterly again. "You probably don't know it's already chaotic outside, right?" "What?" Nia Wuxiang was surprised. "What's going on?" Mo Tiange sighed. "It's complicated to explain." After spending some time, she explained to Nia Wuxiang everything she saw and heard after she went out. Although most of it was just rumors and illusions from Yunzhong, Nia Wuxiang had never heard of these things, so she listened with great interest. "There's actually such a legend in Yunzhong." Nia Wuxiang was very surprised. Although the cultivation world in Yunzhong was much larger than in the Celestial Pole, their realms weren't much higher than the cultivators in the Celestial Pole. However, if the legend of the 5 saints was true, Yunzhong's history was much more glorious than the Celestial Pole's. In the history of the Celestial Pole, there were only rumors of 2 people successfully advancing to the deification realm, and there wasn't any solid evidence. But the 5 saints were different. They had 5 sacred objects handed down from generation to generation, and most of them had disciples to pass on, so their credibility was much higher. Heavenly Devil Tower. I really don't know what kind of magic weapon it is to be called a sacred object. Even if these 5 sacred objects were only keys to open that mysterious space, they definitely weren't ordinary objects. Besides, according to the rumors, this heavenly devil tower was the Devil Venerable's most powerful magic weapon. What? Are you interested? Mo Tiange glanced at her. You're already a devil cultivator. If you can get this heavenly devil tower, your strength will presumably increase greatly. That's good. It's useless even if it's good. Nia Wushang wasn't stupid. She rolled her eyes at Mo Tiange and said, with my current state, it's not suitable for me to travel outside. Even if I can I win against those cultivators? It's better to stay out of it and watch coldly. No matter how good a treasure is, it's not as important as my life. Mo Tiange smiled but didn't say anything. On this point, she and Nia Wushang were quite in agreement. They weren't cultivators who were nearing the end of their lifespans and had no hope of making a realm breakthrough, so why should they risk their lives to fight for this tiny possibility? It was better to cultivate step by step, which would make realm breakthroughs faster. They hadn't been separated for too long, but neither of them felt like they'd reunited after a long time. After talking about these things, they returned to their previous state and went back to their respective cultivation rooms to do their own things. Mo Tiange laid a restriction then entered the virtual sky world. She released the 3 spiritual beasts and let them play while she sat in the cultivation room, pondering in silence. Among her 3 spiritual beasts, although Xiaofan could talk, it was too naive. Feifei was smart enough, but its temperament was too similar to that of humans. It had no interest in things that had nothing to do with it. As such, she could only ponder about returning to the celestial pole by herself. After thinking for a while, she couldn't help but think about the turmoil in Yunzhong. The 5 saints were rumored to have 5 holy objects. Apart from the heavenly devil tower, there was also the inescapable net. She took out her own inescapable net, but the more she looked at it, the stranger she felt. The momentum of this object was indeed not strong, but the spiritual power on it was really powerful. She tried to use her spiritual aura to attack it, but the result was like a clay ox entering the sea. It didn't have the slightest effect. Could this be the rumored great master Hui Yin's inescapable net? Impossible, right? If that was the case, it would be too inconceivable. This was just a magic weapon she inadvertently collected, so how could it be a Buddhist holy object? And before that, it was in the hands of 2 foundation-building cultivators. If she could find the Buddhist cultivator she let go, she might be able to figure out what was going on. Unfortunately, she didn't ask about that person's identity and origin. After looking at it for a while, she still put the inescapable net back. After a moment of hesitation, she took out a rusty sword. This was the Fuxing sword she exchanged from Devil Monarch Xianyue. Although this sword was rusty, it had an extraordinary momentum. The power of wind and thunder could be faintly seen inside, so it was obviously not an ordinary weapon. However, this sword was seriously corroded by the devil aura. She couldn't see the slightest spiritual aura, and the body of the sword was dim. If she didn't look at it carefully, she would probably think it was a useless sword. After thinking for a while, Mo Tiange stood up and walked into the tool refining room. Seeing the familiar layout of the tool refining room, Mo Tiange stood still. She couldn't help but recall the scene when she and Qin Shi refined the heaven and earth fan in the tool refining room. Her tool refining skills really weren't very good. Every small part here was made by Qin Shi himself. At that time, the 2 of them stayed here for several years. Every day, they discussed how to refine the heaven and earth fan, experimenting again and again. In fact, when they were together, they rarely stuck to each other sweetly. Most of the time, they talked about their experiences and exchanged their thoughts. Although they weren't sweet enough, those days were full of happiness when she recalled them. Cultivation companions, cultivation companions, companions who accompanied each other to seek immortality and seek the Tao, that was enough. How could their affectionate relationship compare to the long years of dependence and companionship? They had been separated for 10 years after leaving the celestial pole. In fact, Tiange didn't miss him much, but now that she was in the place where they used to be together and touched the tools he used, she felt a surge of longing that drowned her. I haven't gone back for so many years. Is he doing well? Has he come out of closed-door meditation? Is he worried about me? If he knows I can't go back, will he come to find me? The scenes they used to be together kept emerging in her mind. The cold and taciturn senior martial brother Qin, the master Taoist Shoujing who took her to escape from Mount Yunwu, the 2 months of companionship. The senior martial brother Qin who risked his life to save her, the master Taoist Shoujing who coldly turned away when he saw her, and the 35 years of estrangement. At that time, they were so self-righteous. They could calculate shrewdly in other matters, but when it came to matters of the heart, they always made wild guesses about each other's thoughts. They held on to their pride and refused to put down their pride and treat each other honestly. Fortunately, they finally came together and didn't waste their fate. Thinking back, their meeting was so coincidental. If her father hadn't traveled with him, they wouldn't have met. If second uncle hadn't taken her away, she would have only regarded him as a senior when she grew up in Xianqing school. If he hadn't happened to go to Mount Yunwu, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet as peers, they would have missed each other by just a little bit. Fortunately, he was the person her father entrusted her to. Fortunately, they didn't know each other when she was young. Fortunately, she had grown up before they met. The more she thought back, the more she missed him. Therefore, she had to go back to the celestial pole. Chapter 428. Although she had made up her mind to return to the celestial pole, it was still a matter that needed long-term planning. The situation in Yunzhong was chaotic, so it wasn't a good time to go out. Moreover, it was too dangerous to cross the South Sea with her cultivation level. Considering these 2 points, Tiange could only be patient and do it slowly. 120 years should be enough. The following days were very boring. Nia Wushang didn't leave her cave at all, and Tiange also lived in seclusion. Every day, she cultivated, studied Yaoqing's cultivation experience, read ancient books, and went out to buy some necessities and inquire about news from time to time. High-level cultivators in Yunzhong gathered in the returning ruined sea, and every day, some gossip spread in Guifang City. Not long after, there was a rumor in Guifang City that those cultivators had found traces of the Heavenly Devil Tower. The first cultivator to get the Heavenly Devil Tower had died in the returning ruined sea, and the tower fell into the hands of an individual cultivator. Later, there was another rumor that the individual cultivator escaped for several days and was discovered by a devil monarch, who killed him on the spot and took the Heavenly Devil Tower. Unfortunately, several great cultivators in eastern Tang also discovered it at the same time, and they fell into a fight. In this fight, South Zhou's Buddhist cultivators and Confucian cultivators were also involved. Hundreds and thousands of core formation cultivators fought in the returning ruined sea, and many nascent soul cultivators also shed all pretenses of cordiality. This rumor lasted for several years. Every time Tiange went out, she heard the news of a certain cultivator from a certain sect dying. Tiange and Nia Wushang discussed this in private. After this incident, the forces in Yunzhong would probably be reshuffled. So many cultivators died, and all of them were above the core formation realm. For many small cultivation groups, this would be a disaster. As expected, after that, the rumors in Guifang City were all about how many cultivators had fallen. This storm lasted for more than 20 years before it calmed down. In the first few years, cultivators from all sides fought for the Heavenly Devil Tower, and there was a reign of terror every day. During this period, many small cultivation groups were destroyed because of this. Later, the competition was limited to the nascent soul cultivators of the big cultivation groups. At the same time, as cultivators returned to their sects, the battlefield was no longer limited to the returning ruined sea. But soon, there were many different opinions about who got the Heavenly Devil Tower, and no one could figure it out. Oftentimes, there would be sects that had feuded with each other, claiming that the other party had the Heavenly Devil Tower in their hands. Because of this, Yunzhong was in a state of chaos. In the last 10 years, the storm gradually subsided. All the sects and forces suffered heavy losses and closed their doors to recuperate. Yunzhong finally calmed down. As for who the Heavenly Demon Tower ended up in, no one knew. Apart from the people who obtained the Heavenly Demon Tower, no one else benefited from this turmoil. Instead, they lost many outstanding core formation cultivators and even nascent soul cultivators. Some people even suspected that this was a conspiracy to make the major forces in Yunzhong kill each other and consume their strength. However, there was no doubt that the Heavenly Demon Tower had appeared. Many cultivators had seen this sacred object before, but it was a pity that before they could figure out how to use it, it had been taken away by others. When Mo Tiange heard this, she thought to herself, how could these nascent soul cultivators not think this might be a conspiracy? However, as long as the Heavenly Demon Tower was real, even if they had doubts, they would still jump down willingly. Advancing to the deification realm, for these nascent soul cultivators who had almost cultivated to the extreme and had no hope of advancing, they would not hesitate to risk their lives for it. Living in Guifang City, what Mo Tiange heard the most was about Guifang Demon Monarch and his subordinates. More than 10 years ago, Guifang Demon Monarch had already returned to Guifang City with his disciples. In this battle, although Guifang City's foundation was not shaken, it suffered a lot of losses. For example, among Guifang Demon Monarch's disciples, the two most likely to advance to the nascent soul realm died in the turmoil. For this, Guifang City's devil cultivators were very worried. Although Guifang Demon Monarch was powerful and was one of the 3 great demon monarchs, his lifespan was really running out. Some people calculated that he had 500 years at most. In these 500 years, if Guifang City did not have a powerful successor with profound cultivation, it would become the target of other forces. This was definitely not a good thing for Guifang City. However, some people optimistically said that Guifang Demon Monarch's young disciple with excellent aptitude had already advanced to the middle stage of the core formation realm. In 500 years, he might be able to smoothly advance to the nascent soul realm. At that time, Guifang City could still maintain its status as one of the 3 great devil territories. Besides, although Guifang City suffered losses, the other 2 devil territories also lost a lot of disciples. No one was better off than the other, so what did it matter? There were quite a lot of people who agreed with this theory. After all, low-level cultivators like them couldn't live for 500 years. After they died, who would care about the flood? The Guifang Demon Monarch's young disciple these cultivators mentioned should be Yang Qingji. In other words, Yang Qingji not only escaped unscathed in these more than 20 years of turmoil, but he also advanced to the middle stage of the core formation realm. Moreover, even the heavens were on his side, causing his rival senior brother to fall in the turmoil. In this way, his current days could be regarded as the end of his bitterness and the beginning of his happiness. Without his senior martial brother and sister suppressing him, he became Guifang Demon Monarch's disciple most likely to advance to the nascent soul realm. Guifang City would definitely support him with all its strength. From now on, no one would suppress him, and he would also become the real young lord of Guifang City. In the past more than 20 years, Nia Wushang's refining of the primordial devil aura was quite smooth, but the speed was a bit slow. Until now, she still only refined 1/3 of it. In this case, she still needed 50 years to refine this primordial devil aura for her own use. However, Nya Wushang said the subdued primordial devil aura had greatly improved her cultivation level. She estimated that in a few years, she could advance to the late stage of the core formation realm. If she could successfully subdue all the primordial devil aura in 50 years, she could advance to the nascent soul realm. Nya Wushang was now a devil cultivator, so mental cultivation was no longer important to her. It didn't matter if she directly entered closed-door meditation here until she advanced to the nascent soul realm. As for Mo Tiange, her cultivation in the past more than 20 years was also very smooth. She didn't take too many medicinal pills, but with her qualifications, Mo Yaoqing's cultivation experience, and the rich spiritual aura in the virtual sky world, her cultivation speed was terrifyingly fast. Now, she had reached the peak of the middle stage of the core formation realm and could enter closed-door meditation to advance to the late stage. Although she felt she passed this time's cultivation, Mo Tiange still decided to advance to the late stage first. Everything had its priorities. Her biggest problem now wasn't that her cultivation speed was too fast, but that her cultivation level wasn't high enough. Therefore, even if she had concerns about her unstable foundation, she still decided to advance to the nascent soul realm first. As for the problem of her mental state, it wouldn't be too late to consider it when she advanced to the nascent soul realm. After making this decision, Mo Tiange spent some time to buy the things she needed for her closed-door meditation. After informing Nya Wushang, she entered the virtual sky world to enter closed-door meditation. Sitting in the small room inside the virtual sky world, Mo Tiange didn't cultivate right away. In the past more than 20 years, she didn't just spend her time cultivating. In addition, she also read all the books inside the virtual sky world. She had already used her tool refining technique to grind away the rust on the Fuxing sword in her hand. Although it hadn't recovered its former elegance, it was still faintly shining. She took out the Fuxing sword from her Qianquan bag. The body of the sword was like a vast expanse of autumn water, cold and chilly. The shape of the hilt was simple and unadorned. Upon closer inspection, 2 ancient characters were engraved on the hilt, Fuxing. Although it was no longer mottled with rust, the whole sword was surrounded by a layer of faintly discernible devil aura. This devil aura looked very faint, but Mo Tiange couldn't get rid of it when she tried. She guessed that this sword had been left in the devil domain for several tens of thousands of years. Over time, the originally weak devil aura accumulated into a terrifying power, gradually corroding the masterless Fuxing sword. After several tens of thousands of years of accumulation, no matter how powerful the Fuxing sword was originally, it still couldn't resist the corrosion of time. She once asked Nya Wushang how to deal with this kind of situation, but Nya Wushang said she didn't have an answer. Although she grew up with Master Song Feng, the primordial devil great technique wasn't the same as the cultivation technique of devil cultivators. Besides, this kind of situation was too special, so she had no way of knowing. Mo Tiange turned to search for relevant information in the books left by the previous master of the virtual sky world. In the end, Fei Fei told her that in the Middle Ages, there was a secret treasure called spirit-quenching water. This thing was the nemesis of devil aura and was said to be able to eliminate everything related to devil aura. Fei Fei was idle and bored in the virtual sky world. Aside from cultivating and playing with Xiaohua, the rest of its time was to read books. It was originally a divine beast, so its intelligence wasn't inferior to that of humans. Its memory was even better, it almost never forgot anything. Mo Tiange found that book. Sure enough, there was a record of spirit-quenching water, but this water only appeared occasionally in the Middle Ages Immortal realm. It was extremely rare and precious. The Middle Ages Immortal realm that was called the Middle Ages Immortal realm had long disappeared from the world and was nowhere to be found. Mo Tiange was greatly disappointed and could only give up for the time being. She occasionally took out the Fuxing sword to study whether there was any other way to eliminate the devil aura. In fact, according to Black Moon Devil Monarch, the current Fuxing sword already had a certain amount of power, so it wouldn't be a problem for her to use it as a magic weapon. However, if the devil aura on the sword could be eliminated, the sword could regain its former sharpness. Since this sword was the sword of Fu Yaozi, the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong's history, if it regained its former power, how powerful would it be? Even though Mo Tiange wasn't too greedy for magic weapons, she still felt agitated when she thought about this. She put away the Fuxing sword, then arranged the items she bought this time one by one. Although she didn't really need spiritual plants, cultivating in seclusion for more than 20 years still cost her a lot of spirit stones. There were most spiritual plants in the virtual sky world, but there were always some ingredients that couldn't be found here, so she had to buy them. Formation tools, talismans, and so on. Although they didn't cost much each time, they added up to a considerable amount. This was Guifang City, so Dao cultivators' things weren't cheap. In the past more than 20 years, Mo Tiange watched as her pockets flattened. In the past, she received a lot of offerings from the cultivation group, and Bishuan Court once again paid her several tens of thousands of spirit stones. In addition to the many Qinkuan bags she picked up on Demonic Mountain and the belongings of cultivators she killed, she didn't take spirit stones seriously for a while. But even if she had too many spirit stones, they couldn't make up for so many years of not making any money. Moreover, the cost of reaching the core formation realm wasn't small. After realizing this, Mo Tiange began to plan carefully. As long as she controlled herself and avoided spending as much as possible, the spirit stones she had should be enough for her until she formed her nascent soul. Once she became a nascent soul cultivator, she naturally wouldn't need to worry about spirit stones anymore. In the end, she shook her head and threw these trivial matters to the back of her mind. She then tidied up the miscellaneous items, sat cross-legged on the praying mat, started to meditate, and began to breathe. During this closed-door meditation, she definitely had to enter the late stage of the core formation realm. Chapter 429. In the sky above Guifang City, several people were standing in the air where the fog lingered. These people were all wearing monk robes and straw shoes. They were bald and scarred, holding Buddhist staffs and dressed like monks. However, the color and style of their kasayas were slightly different. Among them, the one with the most exquisite kasaya and the strongest momentum was an old monk with white eyebrows and a white beard. This old monk was sitting cross-legged on the lotus platform with his palms together and his eyes closed. He was surrounded by other monks with Buddhist beads hanging in front of his chest. "Jueshin, is it here?" the old monk asked. When he asked, his eyes were still closed, his face was calm, and he didn't move at all. A middle-aged monk standing next to him lowered his head and answered, "Yes, master. I've investigated. The person we're looking for is here." The old monk nodded slightly. "Lead the way." "Yes," the middle-aged monk answered respectfully. Then he looked up and said to the others, "Junior Marshall brothers, let's go." Under the guidance of this middle-aged monk, a group of people hid in the fog and quietly sneaked into Guifang City. However, none of the cultivators in Guifang City noticed them. Even the city protecting restriction didn't move. At this moment, if there were high-level cultivators here, they would find that the old monk with a kind face was actually a cultivator in the late stage of nascent soul, and the disciples around him were all in the core formation realm. Mo Tiange opened her eyes, looked at her hands, and was overjoyed. With enough medicinal pills and 3 years of closed-door meditation, she finally advanced to the late stage of core formation realm smoothly. This speed wasn't fast, but it wasn't slow either. Before this, her cultivation level was high, but her mental state cultivation hadn't reached the realm where success would come naturally. In the past 3 years, while she cultivated, she used all kinds of panaceas to help her stabilize her spiritual aura and calm her mind. Only in this way could she smoothly advance to the middle stage of core formation realm step by step. For traditional Taoist cultivators like them, if their mental state wasn't strong enough, it would be much more difficult for them to advance. Unfortunately, many Taoist cultivators didn't understand this. Although they knew they had to cultivate their mental state, they didn't pay much attention to it. In this world, spiritual aura was scarce and cultivation was difficult, so many Taoist cultivators took the same path of cultivation as devil cultivators. They only pursued strength and didn't pay attention to mental state cultivation. Once she sensed the abundance of spiritual aura in her body, she stretched her body, then opened the cultivation room's restriction. As soon as the door was opened, Fei Fei ran in. "Ah, Master, you really did advance." Fei Fei's cheerful voice made Mo Tiange instinctively feel like there was a conspiracy. She asked warily, "What are you doing?" Fei Fei blinked. "No, I'm just saying." After a while, it wagged its tail and said, "Master, it's been 29 years. Mo Tiange understood what it meant. 29 years. It had been 29 years since they discovered that the South Pole Island had sunk. In other words, it had been more than 40 years since she left the celestial pole. The remaining time was less than 100 years. Although she accepted Wanderer Ziwei's task together with Daoist Fangjing's cultivation level and lifespan, the possibility of him completing the task within 200 years was next to none, so she had to do it herself. Even if she couldn't do it, she had to return to Ziwei's Immortal's cave in the celestial pole. Otherwise, even if Wanderer Ziwei suddenly became kind and didn't want her to die, it would be useless. 29 years. Mo Tiange sighed. Time was tight. Since she hadn't taken care of the virtual sky world for 3 years, Mo Tiange spent some time tidying it up. She first ordered the 2 stone sculpture puppets to tidy up the medicinal fields and then to repair the bamboo house. As for the 3 spiritual beasts, they didn't need her care at all. Xiaohua grew up here, so it was more familiar with the spiritual plants and the medicinal fields than she was. As for Fei Fei and Xiaofan, they already had spiritual intelligence, so she didn't need to worry about them at all. Afterwards, she left the virtual sky world. As soon as she stepped out of her cultivation room, the door of Nia Wushang's cultivation room opened at the same time. Sure enough, you made a realm breakthrough smoothly. Nia Wushang, who was sitting cross-legged on the stone bed, raised her head and smiled at her. Mo Tiange looked at her with surprise. You also made a realm breakthrough. Nia Wushang was now in the late stage of the core formation realm. Her primordial devil aura had converged a lot, but her power had become stronger. Nia Wushang straightened her clothes, got off the bed and walked out of the cultivation room. The 2 of them sat down casually in the hall. When we first met, I was in the late stage of the foundation building realm and you were in the middle stage. My cultivation level was higher than yours, and I'm older than you, so how could I fall behind you? Mo Tiange was stunned, then burst into laughter. You actually remember this. In the cultivation world, it was very common for the younger to have a higher cultivation level than the older. Very few people would judge their cultivation level by age, unless they thought highly of themselves and were unwilling to admit defeat. Mo Tiange didn't expect Nia Wushang to be so competitive. I always have to find some motivation for myself. Nia Wushang said sternly, by the way, since you've advanced to the late stage, what are you going to do next? It doesn't matter to me now. It doesn't matter if I enter closed-door meditation here until I reach the nascent soul realm, but you don't seem to be able to, right? This was exactly what Mo Tiange was worried about. She thought for a while then said with a sigh, what else can I do? The turmoil in Yunzhong is almost over, so it shouldn't matter if I go out now. That being the case, I'd better go find Ling Yunhe. On one hand, I can collect my debt, and on the other hand, I can ask him for information. Nia Wushang nodded. That's a good idea. She then smiled. Have you asked around? Is Ling Yunhe still alive? This Mo Tiange also didn't know. In Guifang City, the news she heard were all mixed. Eastern Tang was, after all, a bit far away. Even if Zhuyan's sect was the #1 sect in Yunzhong, devil cultivators didn't have much interest in its sect head. However, Ling Yunhe shouldn't be that unlucky, right? No matter what, he's the sect head of Zhuyan's sect, and he's favored by the elders. He shouldn't have been sacrificed, right? Probably. Nia Wushang shrugged. She didn't care about Ling Yunhe. In any case, the debt he owed her wasn't very useful now. When are you going to leave? Probably. Just as she was about to say something, she suddenly felt a chill on her back. She and Nia Wushang looked at the door at the same time, looking vigilant. There's someone, Nia Wushang said in a low voice. Mo Tiange nodded lightly, stood up, and completely activated the restrictions around the cave. At the same time, she spread her divine sense. They're coming for us, she said. It was very easy to distinguish this point. The cave they chose was very remote. Although there were other cultivators living in the surroundings, they laid restrictions and didn't receive any voice transmissions, so those cultivators were smart enough not to disturb them. But now, there were several auras outside that were heading straight for their cave abode. Among them, there was one aura that was even more shocking. Nascent Soul Cultivator. Nia Wushang also sensed it, and her expression was a bit strange. Why are there nascent soul cultivators? Moreover, their auras are extremely strong. They don't seem to be ordinary people. They lived with nascent soul cultivators all year round, so based on their experience, it was very easy to distinguish between the early stage and the late stage of the nascent soul realm. This person's aura was definitely that of a late-stage nascent soul cultivator. Moreover, his aura was deliberately restrained, and he was deliberately coming for them. Now, they wouldn't believe it if they said they were being too sensitive. As expected, those people finally stopped in front of their cave abode. Zhu Axian, the old monk on the lotus throne, called out with his eyes closed. He didn't move at all. Yes, Master, the middle-aged monk whose Buddhist name was Zhu Axian answered respectfully. Without needing any instructions, he already stood out. Zhu Axian stood in front of the cave's stone door and said loudly, "Benefactors in the cave, we monks from Mount Baifu's Huayan Temple take the liberty to ask for an audience." The monk's voice wasn't loud, but his breath was steady. His voice was like a heavy bell, entering the ears of the two people inside the cave. After a while, there was still no movement. The monk spoke again, "Two benefactors, we are monks from Mount Baifu's Huayan Temple. We take the liberty to request an audience with you." His tone was neither hurried nor slow, but there was a hint of grandeur in it. A moment later, the cave's stone door was finally opened. Two women appeared in front of the monks. One of them was black and the other was white, a Taoist and a devil. Mo Tiange stood half a step ahead of Nia Wushang. Her gaze swept over the monks in front of her and finally fell on the late-stage, nascent soul old monk. She saluted him and said, "Greetings to Senior Buddhist. May I know why masters have graced us with their presence?" The late-stage, nascent soul old monk still had his eyes closed and didn't answer. Monk Zhu Axian, who shouted just now, also didn't say anything. All the monks' gazes fell on the young monk standing on the side with his head lowered and his palms clasped together. The tall young monk raised his head and his gaze fell on Mo Tiange. He took 2 steps forward and stood next to monk Zhu Axian. Soon after, he cupped his hands and saluted Mo Tiange. "Benefactor, do you still remember this poor monk? Upon hearing what he said, Mo Tiange stared at the monk with a slight frown. This monk didn't look different from the others. He was wearing the same monk's robe and straw shoes, had a respectful attitude, and was in the early stage of the core formation realm. Among this group of monks, he didn't stand out at all. However, when Mo Tiange looked at him, she felt a sense of familiarity. This feeling wasn't strong, which meant this person definitely wasn't someone she had a deep impression of. Maybe they only met once or twice, and it was a long time ago. Seeing that she didn't answer, the monk said again, 40 years ago, when I was still in the middle stage of the foundation building realm, I offended Benefactor in Sky Snow City. Benefactor, do you still remember? 40 years ago, Sky Snow City. Mo Tiange hadn't seen many cultivators in Yunzhong, and Buddhist cultivators were even fewer. Upon hearing what he said, her eyes suddenly widened. So it's you. Seeing that she recognized him, the monk smiled. His attitude was still calm. I am. It's been many years since we last met. Benefactor, how have you been? Mo Tiange took a deep breath, then turned around and gave Nia Wushang a meaningful glance. Her meaning was, these people are coming for me. She already remembered who this person was. 40 years ago, there were two foundation building cultivators who tried to rob her in Sky Snow City. One of them spoke rudely and was killed by her, while the other one had a good character, so she let him go. It was from them that she obtained the inescapable net. Thinking about the inescapable net, Mo Tiange already understood why these people were looking at her. The inescapable net in her hands must be the sacred Buddhist relic left behind by Great Master Hui Yin. It wasn't an imitation, it was the real deal. She didn't answer. Instead, she shifted her gaze to the old monk Yuan Ho, whose eyes were still closed. The old monk had a smile on his face and a kind countenance, but he didn't say anything. May I ask who you are, great masters? The middle-aged monk, Zhu Axian, chanted the name of Buddha, then said, Benefactor, we're disciples of Mount Baifu's Huayan Temple. This poor monk's master and also our temple's Puji the Venerable. His Dharma name is Wuming. This poor monk's Dharma name is Zhu Axian, and these are my junior martial brothers. This is Zhu Wu. In the end, he deliberately pointed at the young monk who spoke to her before. Mo Tiange nodded slightly. Although the other party didn't come with good intentions, his attitude was very polite, so she couldn't be rude. She cupped her hands and said, I'm from the outer endless sea. My surname is Qin and my given name is Wei. This is my good friend, Tiancan. Presumably, Great Master's purpose in coming here has nothing to do with her, right? Chapter 430. Among Venerable Avidya's disciples, Jueshin was obviously the one with the longest seniority, so he was the one who spoke for Venerable Avidya. Upon hearing Mo Tiange's words, Jueshin said, So it's Benefactor Qin. Yes, we came to look for you. From what you said, I presume you know what we're here for. Mo Tiange said faintly, I didn't at first, but I guessed after seeing your junior martial brother. Jueshin put his palms together and bowed. Since that's the case, I wonder if Benefactor Qin is willing to return the original item. Mo Tiange didn't answer immediately. She first looked at Jueshin, then at Jueshin, who had his head lowered, and finally at Venerable Avidya, who had been smiling with his eyes closed. Venerable Avidya was a respectful title in Buddhism. Only nascent soul cultivators with extraordinary strength could be granted this title. Ordinary nascent soul cultivators were only called venerables. It seemed this Venerable Avidya had an extraordinary position in Huayan Temple. However, she was very curious. Since this Buddhist cultivator's Dharma name was Avidya and his eyes were closed, could he really not see? Looking at the situation in front of her, Mo Tiange weighed the situation and said, Venerable Avidya, Masters, to be honest, if Master Jueshin hadn't come, I would have long forgotten about this matter. Now that I've met Master Jueshin, I know what happened that year was unusual. Seeing that Jueshin wanted to say something, she raised her hand and continued, I'm not interested in other people's sect matters. However, I believe Master Jueshin has already explained what happened that year to the other masters. Since that's the case, shouldn't you give us an explanation for the items you're asking for? Her words were neither servile nor overbearing. She didn't become submissive because of Venerable Avidya's power, nor did she admit that they were unlucky because they had more people. For a moment, the monks were speechless. Jueshin probably also felt it was inconvenient to answer, so he turned to look at his master behind him. Venerable Avidya still had his eyes closed and a smile on his face. This made Jueshin a bit uncertain. He turned back and said hesitantly, Benefactor Qin, this matter, Jueshin. Venerable Avidya, who had been silent, suddenly said, Let Master say it. Jueshin hastily turned around and bowed respectfully. Yes, Master. He then stood to the side. Benefactor Qin. Revered Wu Ming's eyes remained closed the entire time. His voice was neither fast nor slow. What happened in the past was related to the internal affairs of my temple, so it was inconvenient for me to explain it to you. I ask that you forgive me. This revered Wu Ming was a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, but he was actually so polite to a mere core formation cultivator. Mo Tiange was very surprised. Although she did not know much about Buddhism, she had been in Yunzhong for a long time. She knew that the rules of Buddhism were very different from those of Taoist sects. Buddhist cultivators were very strict. Although the one with the highest cultivation level was still respected, they all judged right and wrong based on reason. It was also because of this that she had the guts to say these words in front of these people. However, she did not expect a late nascent soul cultivator like Reverend Avidya to treat others with such politeness. This made her a little embarrassed. Senior. Mo Tiange cupped her fists and said, Junior has no intention of prying into the affairs of your esteemed temple. It's just that you've come to my Immortal's cave with such a great commotion, and you even want to ask for magic weapons, so you must give me an explanation. This old monk understands Benefactor's intention. Revered Avidya had a smile on his face and a calm expression on his face. Normally, it was my Huayan Temple's disciples who offended Benefactor first, so Benefactor is not at fault. However, Benefactor killed one of my temple's disciples and took away my temple's magic weapon, so this matter can be considered even. What do you think? Upon hearing what he said, Mo Tiange wrinkled her brows slightly. Just a moment ago, she thought this revered Avidya's attitude was amiable and didn't have the slightest domineering characteristic of late nascent soul cultivators. However, his words were rather thought-provoking. What happened that day was originally because two Huayan Temple's disciples schemed against her first. Even if she killed both of them, it wouldn't be considered a mistake. However, she didn't kill them all. Not only did she leave a way out for Ju Wu, but she also didn't seize his Qianquan bag. She only took away the magic weapon that schemed against her. She was already being merciful. That being the case, since this group of people came to ask for the magic weapon, they should apologize to her. However, this old monk said they offended her, so she also killed them and took their treasures, so they were even. This was a bit confusing, right and wrong. Mo Tiange thought in her heart that a late nascent soul cultivator was a late nascent soul cultivator after all. No matter how amiable he was, he still wasn't willing to lose face in front of his juniors. However, this actually aroused her temper, and she couldn't help but want to argue with this revered Avidya. With that thought in mind, Mo Tiange revealed a smile and said, What Senior said makes sense. Seeing that she agreed, revered Avidya continued to say, Since Benefactor doesn't have any objections, could you return our temple's magic weapon? Ha! Mo Tiange chuckled. She stared at revered Avidya in front of her and said unhurriedly, Senior just said that 2 of your temple's disciples offended me first, so it's not wrong for me to kill one of them and take away the magic weapon, right? Revered Avidya nodded. Yes. That being the case, between me and your temple, there's no longer a problem of who owes whom, right? Revered Avidya paused for a moment before answering, correct. Mo Tiange smiled. That being the case, isn't Senior pressuring me by asking me to directly hand over the magic weapon? All the monks were dumbfounded. Even Revered Avidya didn't answer. After a moment of silence, someone among the monks couldn't hold back anymore and shouted, Benefactor, the inescapable net is our temple's precious treasure. My master asked you nicely for it, but you actually, Juehue. Jueshin shouted, Master's here. You can't be rude. The monk glared at Mo Tiange reluctantly, then lowered his head to accept the instruction. Yes, eldest martial brother. After a while, Revered Avidya finally spoke. Benefactor, this old monk might as well speak frankly. Keeping that magic weapon in your hands is a disaster, not a blessing. If you hand it back to this old monk, at first glance, it might seem like you've suffered a loss, but when disaster strikes, you'll know what this old monk said isn't false. Mo Tiange remained unmoved. But if I hand this thing over to Senior, it'll definitely be of great benefit to Senior. Nevertheless, Revered Avidya said, Benefactor, if someone else came here, they definitely wouldn't be so polite. Mo Tiange raised her eyebrows, but in the next second, she smiled. A late nascent realm cultivator was a late nascent realm cultivator after all. Although he spoke politely, he didn't want to suffer a loss at all. The meaning of his words was clear, with my status and cultivation level, how could I be polite to you? Yet you still don't know what's good for you. She naturally knew she had to hand over the inescapable net in front of a late nascent realm cultivator. However, she wasn't willing to keep it safe for someone else for 40 years, so she had to get something back, right? She sighed. In any case, Senior is a late nascent realm expert. Do you really want to be calculative with a small cultivator like me? Upon hearing this, Revered Avidya paused for a moment, then suddenly smiled. From the moment he appeared until just now, his expression had been benevolent and his words had been gentle, maintaining the demeanor of a senior eminent monk. It wasn't until now that he finally showed a little bit of humanity. With his eyes still closed, he said with a smile, It's my fault as a senior. Little fellow Daoist, what benefit do you want? Just tell me directly. From benefactor to little fellow Daoist, the way this Revered Avidya addressed her was undoubtedly one step closer. Mo Tiange knew her behavior didn't annoy him. In fact, he even had a little favorable impression of her, which made her feel relieved. Even though she was bold, wanting to ask for benefits from a late nascent realm cultivator she didn't know, she was still worried. After pondering for a moment, she took out something from her Qianquan bag and spread it on her palm. Senior, Junior isn't someone who doesn't know what's good for her. Since this thing belongs to your honorable temple, I'll return it to you. As soon as she took out the inescapable net, everyone's gazes immediately focused on her hand. Zhu Axian cried out involuntarily, It's the inescapable net. It's really the inescapable net. Zhu Wu, who was standing on the side, chanted Buddha's name and muttered excitedly to himself, Master, the sacred object is finally back. Disciple didn't become a sinner of Huayan Temple. Mo Tiange took another look at him. When Zhu Wu said that, his gaze was directed at the sky as if he was talking to someone who had already passed away. Could it be that Revered Avidya wasn't his master? This wasn't impossible. 40 years ago, Zhu Wu was only a foundation-building cultivator, but he had a Buddhist sacred object in his possession. This was already unusual. If he really was Revered Avidya's disciple, how could he and his junior martial brother have been driven out and reduced to the point of robbing passers-by? Presumably, this matter involved Huayan Temple's secrets. Seeing Mo Tiange taking out the treasure so straightforwardly, the smile on revered Avidya's face became even brighter. Buddhist light flashed on his right hand, and the inescapable net in Mo Tiange's hand flew up. In a flash, it was already in his hand. Revered Avidya spread the object and carefully felt it with both hands. It seemed like his eyes really couldn't see. After a while, he raised his head and said with a smile while holding the inescapable net, "Since little fellow Taoist is so straightforward, this old monk can't be too stingy. Whatever you want, don't hesitate to say it." What he said made Mo Tiange feel relieved. Although this revered Avidya was somewhat astute, in the end, he was much more generous than those late nascent soul cultivators who used their power to oppress others. He didn't go back on what he just promised. She cupped her hands and said, "Junior wants to exchange some information from Senior." Oh. Revered Avidya's smile was quite meaningful. Although his eyes were closed, Mo Tiange felt a sharp gaze on her. "Little fellow Taoist, you said before that you wouldn't pry into my temple's internal affairs, right?" "Of course." Mo Tiange's gaze fell on the inescapable net in his hand. She said calmly, "What Junior wants to know doesn't have much to do with your temple." Revered Avidya was quite satisfied with her answer. He nodded and said, "That being the case, just say it." She thought for a while, then said slowly, "Junior once heard about the legend of the 5 saints in Yunzhong. Rumor has it that when the 5 saints passed away, they left behind 5 magic weapons, all of which were called holy objects. 2 of them were the Heavenly Devil Pagoda and the Inescapable Net. May I know what the other 3 are?" Revered Avidya paused for a while, then said, "This question indeed has nothing to do with my temple's internal affairs, so I can answer you. The other 3 holy objects of the 5 saints are Saint Guazian's soul-restricting bead, Master Zhou's nameless book, and Fuyazi's Fuxing sword." Mo Tiange took a deep breath, then asked, "Rumor has it that these 5 holy objects can open the mysterious space in the Sea of Returning Ruins. Is that true?" Upon hearing this question, Revered Avidya smiled slightly. "I can't answer this question accurately. I can only tell you that the 5 holy objects have other uses and are also related to the Sea of Returning Ruins. But whether they're used to open the mysterious space or for other uses, I don't know." After a pause, Revered Avidya asked again, "Little fellow Taoist, do you have any other questions?" "No." Mo Tiange bowed respectfully. "Thank you for telling me, Senior." Revered Avidya smiled. He was about to say something, but in the next second, his smile disappeared and he looked up at the sky. At that moment, Mo Tiange heard a deep voice coming from the sky. "Old monk Avidya, why didn't you say hello when you came to my Guifang city?" Chapter 431. Mo Tiange raised her head and looked at the source of the voice. Before long, a group of people appeared out of nowhere in the sky filled with devil aura. "Late-stage nascent soul," Nia Wushang murmured, her eyes falling on the leading cultivator. If they weren't sure this person was in the late stage of nascent soul, they would never think he was Guifang City Lord, one of the 3 great devil monarchs of Yunzhong demonic path. This Guifang demonic monarch looked like he was in his 30s or 40s. He was thin, had a pale face, and had a gentle bearing. There was no devil aura on his body, but he was elegant like a teacher in the secular world. However, his momentum was extremely strong, not weaker than that of Venerable Avidya. In Guifang City, who could have such momentum except for Guifang demonic monarch? Moreover, Mo Tiange saw Yang Qingji standing behind him at a glance. Fellow Taoist Guifang. The moment he noticed Guifang demonic monarch, Venerable Avidya had already put away the inescapable net. He put his palms together with a smile and said, I'm just passing by. I have important things to do, so it's not convenient for me to meet you. Hee hee. Guifang demonic monarch's voice was a little hoarse, and he looked coldly at the Buddhist cultivators below. Old monk Avidya, as Venerable Puji, it doesn't seem right for you to bring so many disciples into my Guifang city without greeting us, right? The cities of the demonic path were different from the cities of the righteous path. Whether it was the state of Eastern Tang or the state of Southern Zhou, they all had their own royal families and prefectures. Even in a cultivation city like Sky Snow City, there were officials appointed by the imperial court to manage the mortals and take care of mundane affairs. Sky Snow City was under the influence of Ling clan, but nominally, anyone could come and go. However, Demonic Path City was built by the city lord and belonged to him. It had nothing to do with the royal family of Northern Chilan Nation. Therefore, Guifang City was actually Guifang Demonic Monarch's private territory. Venerable Avidya came to Guifang City, but he didn't greet Guifang Demonic Monarch and didn't go through the city gate. How could Guifang Demonic Monarch just let it go? However, Mo Tiange was very curious. No matter what, Guifang Devil Monarch was one of the 3 strongest devil monarchs, and Guifang City was also his private territory. Why did he only find out after revered Avidya brought his disciples into Guifang City? Could it be that revered Wu Ming had some secret technique that blocked the Ghost Square Demon Monarch's divine sense? However, a late Yuan cultivator was a late Yuan cultivator after all. Although he was a bit late, he still arrived before revered Avidya left. Venerable Wu Ming, on the other hand, was still smiling, and there was not even a hint of guilt on his face. Fellow Daoist Guifang, why do you have to be so calculative? This old monk will leave with my disciple right now. How about it? Humph. Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch said coldly, Old monk, you have a good plan. You want to leave. Leave it here first. Something. Revered Wu Ming looked surprised. Fellow Daoist Guifang, what are you talking about? If she hadn't personally handed the inescapable net to Venerable Avidya just now, Mo Tiange would have thought he really didn't take anything. Such a benevolent-looking eminent monk actually acted like a scoundrel so naturally, it really made people speechless. Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch's expression darkened. Old monk Avidya, don't be so shameless. This is Guifang City, not your Baifu Mountain. This old monk may be old, but his eyes aren't blurry. There's no need for fellow Daoist Guifang to remind me, revered Avidya answered with a smile. Seeing Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch's darkened expression, Mo Tiange pulled Nia Wushang and cautiously retreated a few steps, hiding inside the cave. Fortunately, she already handed over the inescapable net. For Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch, they were basically insignificant characters, he didn't even spare them a glance. It seems they'll most likely fight, Nia Wushang said softly as she looked outside with a bit of worry. Mo Tiange carefully closed the cave's stone door, then quickly laid a bunch of restrictions around the cave. Will it work? Nia Wushang expressed her doubts upon seeing her actions. Late-stage nascent soul cultivators, if they fight, they can raise the whole mountaintop to the ground. They won't fight here, Mo Tiange said with certainty. I'm just taking precautions. Oh, right. Nia Wushang nodded. This was Guifang City. How could Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch fight casually in his own territory? A battle between late nascent soul cultivators could possibly destroy an entire city. Bald donkey. Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch's gloomy voice rang out. It seems you won't obediently hand over the thing if we don't fight. Revered Avidya's voice was still as calm as ever. Fellow Daoist Guifang, this thing is our Buddhist sacred object. What's the use of it for you? If you give me face today, my Huayan temple will owe you a favor in the future. Isn't that good? Humph. Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch said coldly, you make it sound nice. The Heavenly Demon Tower is our Devil Path's sacred object, but didn't you Buddhist cultivators still come to snatch it? Judging from his tone, Ghostcraft Fiend Monarch was extremely resentful. Could it be that the Buddhist cultivators played a part in his failure to snatch the Heavenly Demon Tower this time? Fellow Taoist Guifang. Revered Avidya dragged out his tone as if he was patiently persuading him. The matter regarding the Heavenly Demon Tower was out of control in the end. We also had no choice. Now that it's over, it's useless to argue about it, isn't it? This old monk looks like an eminent monk, but how could he be so shameless? Nia Wushang said in a low voice. She could also be considered a Devil Path cultivator now, so she really couldn't stand revered Avidya's behavior. Mo Tiange smiled. That depends on who he's dealing with. He doesn't mind showing the demeanor of a senior expert to insignificant cultivators like us, but when he's dealing with cultivators in the same realm as him, if he takes a step back, he'll be giving away his own benefits. Nia Wushang nodded, then said with a sigh, even if the Buddhist commandments are stricter, they're still cultivators after all. In front of benefits, they have to fight for it. Mo Tiange didn't say anything. Compared to other Taoists, the teachings of Buddhism were obviously gentler, but no matter how gentle it was, it had its limits. Revered Avidya didn't mind a junior like her negotiating conditions in front of him, and he was willing to give her some benefits. For him, she was still too insignificant. How could people haggle with ants? But in front of cultivators in the same realm as him, like Guifang Demon Monarch, he wouldn't take half a step back. He couldn't give up something that a late-stage nascent soul cultivator fancied. If he retreated, he'd lose the benefits of himself and the entire Huayan temple behind him. Cut the crap. You snuck into my Guifang city, so don't even think about leaving with that thing. Guifang Demon Monarch was already impatient. When he said that, the two of them felt the spiritual aura pressure suddenly increase. Fortunately, Mo Tiange had laid a restriction before, so the spiritual aura pressure weakened a lot. Besides, Mo Tiange's soul-refining art had been cultivated to a very high level, and Nia Wushang had strong primordial devil aura in her body, so they weren't affected. Fellow Taoist Guifang, don't be so anxious. Isn't it bad to fight and kill for no reason? Both of us lost a lot in the Sea of Returning Ruins last time. It's time for us to recuperate. Why should we waste our energy? You make it sound so nice. Guifang Demonic Monarch said angrily, you have obtained the sacred item of Buddhism, so you are naturally satisfied. If I allow you to sneak into my Guifang city and take away a sacred item, how can I have the face to live in this world? Old bald donkey, I'll give you two choices. 1, we'll have a good fight outside the city. If you win, you're free to come and go, and I won't say a word. If you lose, you'll leave the thing behind obediently, and you can still leave safely with your disciples. 2, I'll directly activate Guifang City's great restriction and kill you and your disciples at the risk of destroying the city. What do you think? Choose one. In the end, Guifang Demon Monarch's tone became gloomy. Obviously, he couldn't let this matter go. These two choices were very simple. Either one fight to decide the outcome, or the other fight to the death. What Mo Tiange guessed was right. This was Guifang City, so Guifang Demon Monarch couldn't possibly not care about it at all, so he proposed the first solution. In this way, Guifang City could be unscathed, and Venerable Avidya wouldn't be distracted by the safety of his disciples. However, whoever lost would lose the holy object, and they couldn't go back on their word. But if they chose the second solution, it would be a fight to the death. Guifang Demon Monarch would bet Guifang City, while Venerable Avidya would have to pay with his and his disciples' lives. At first glance, this solution seemed to make Guifang Demon Monarch suffer more losses, but Guifang City was a place he had been managing for 1,000 years. How could he let others come and go? Once he activated Guifang City's great restriction, Venerable Avidya would most likely die no matter how powerful he was. Of course, with the great divine power of a late nascent soul cultivator, Guifang City and all the cultivators in the city would disappear from the world. At that time, although Guifang Demon Monarch survived and obtained the Buddhist holy object, his 1,000-year foundation would be destroyed in a day. Moreover, he was very likely to be seriously injured, and his cultivation level might be greatly damaged. In the end, he wouldn't have a good ending. It wasn't easy to cultivate to the nascent soul realm. Breaking through to the late stage of the nascent soul realm was even more rare among nascent soul cultivators. The higher the level of a cultivator, the more they cherished their lives. The first solution was the one that suited their interests. However, in addition to this, it also depended on Venerable Avidya's confidence and the importance of this Buddhist holy object. If Huayan Temple didn't hesitate to use the whole temple to retrieve this Buddhist holy object, then Venerable Avidya would have to fight Guifang Demon Monarch even if he had to sacrifice the lives of himself and his disciples. Hey, fellow Taoist Guifang. Venerable Avidya's voice sounded very helpless. Do you have to leave no way out? Humph. No need to talk nonsense, just choose. After that, there was no more conversation. Mo Tiange and Nia Wushang felt the spiritual aura pressure getting stronger and stronger. In the end, it was so strong that the two of them felt uncomfortable. From time to time, the sound of other disciples coughing up blood because they couldn't bear the spiritual aura pressure came from outside. Since fellow Taoist Guifang is determined, this old monk won't say much. Please go ahead. This time, Venerable Avidya's voice became solemn and deep. Both Mo Tiange and Nia Wushang's hearts skipped a beat. Could it be that Venerable Avidya chose the second solution? If that was the case, hiding in this immortal's cave would mean certain death. Before they could communicate, they heard Guifang Demon Monarch's voice. Old monk, it seems you have some sense of responsibility. Let's go. Right after he finished speaking, one of the auras instantly went far away. The two of them heaved sighs of relief. It seemed Venerable Avidya chose the first solution. The crisis in front of them finally had nothing to do with them. Soon after, the auras at the entrance left one by one. Finally, there was no one left. Mo Tiange and Nia Wushang looked at each other. Both of them heaved long sighs of relief. This was really an unexpected disaster. Chapter 432. Guifang Demon Monarch, Venerable Wu Ming, and the others all left, but Mo Tiange and Nia Wushang were still worried about this matter. Although a late nascent soul cultivator like Guifang Demon Monarch wouldn't take them seriously, other people in Guifang City might not. It would be fine if Guifang Demon Monarch won in this trip, but if he lost, his disciples and subordinates would probably come to trouble them. The two of them didn't return to the cultivation room for a while but sat in the hall of the cave in silence. After a while, both of them were shocked and looked out of the cave. They both felt the amazing fluctuations coming from outside Guifang City. Obviously, the two late nascent soul cultivators had started to fight. The power of late nascent soul cultivators can't stop Guifang City even if there are restrictions to protect the city. Nia Wushang sighed. Even they were affected, so it could be seen how strong the spiritual pressure was when the two of them fought. Nia Wushang was right. Guifang City was in a panic because of the spiritual pressure from the two late nascent soul cultivators. Countless low-level cultivators and mortals vomited blood. Unable to control themselves, they had to hide in the formation arranged by the city lord's mansion. The high-level cultivators stopped their closed-door meditation without exception, walked out of their caves, and looked outside the city anxiously. This turmoil lasted for 3 days. 3 days later, the fluctuations outside the city finally stopped. Guifang Demon Monarch lost. Nia Wushang opened her eyes and said. Mo Tinga knew she had a treasure with her, so she was very sensitive to devil aura. Since she said so, it was most likely true. Should we leave here? Nia Wushang hesitated. It's better to find another quiet cave for closed-door meditation, but my situation is different from yours. I just advanced to the late nascent soul realm, so my devil aura is not very stable, Mo Tinga frowned. I'm fine. After I advanced, I spent some time to stabilize my realm. She pondered for a moment. In fact, we don't have to be so anxious. This matter doesn't have much to do with us. Even if someone comes to trouble us, they won't go too far. And Nia Wushang answered absent-mindedly. Logically speaking, although she was already in the late stage of the core formation realm, she was of no value to Guifang Demon Lord, a cultivator in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. And with the way Guifang Demon Lord governed Guifang City, he should not vent his anger on her. His disciples and subordinates should not go too far either. If that was the case, she didn't mind enduring it for a while. Mo Tinga stared at her. She hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she didn't say anything. This matter originally had nothing to do with Nia Wushang. If the two of them didn't live together, it wouldn't have implicated her. However, they had reunited in a different place and had been companions for so many years, so they already regarded each other as friends. If she apologized, it would be too formal. By the way, how did you get a Buddhist holy item? Why haven't you mentioned it all these years? Nia Wushang asked in bewilderment. Regarding this matter, Mo Tinga could only smile bitterly. If they didn't come looking for me, I really wouldn't have known that this thing was actually a Buddhist sacred object. If I knew, I definitely would have concealed my identity and hid. How could I have let them track me all the way here? Soon after, she briefly told Nia Wushang what happened 40 years ago. After figuring out the cause and effect, she wasn't surprised that the Buddhist cultivators tracked them here. That year, after she seized the inescapable net, she lived in Sky Snow City for a while, then went to Carefree Valley, Starfall City, and finally settled in Guifang City. All these years, although her whereabouts were uncertain, she never disguised herself or changed her name. She also didn't deliberately hide in public places. Since Huayan Temple was a big cultivation group, it had its own way to find her. After listening to her, Nia Wushang said, I see. It seems that Jiawu isn't ordinary. How could an ordinary disciple casually go out with a sacred object? Moreover, he was driven out back then, but now he's following revered Wu Ming. Not only has he advanced to the core formation realm, but he's also very dignified. I'm afraid what happened back then was related to the internal strife of Huayan Temple. Mo Tinga was a disciple of a big cultivation group, so she knew more about this kind of internal strife than Nia Wushang. She could almost deduce what Jiawu experienced back then. Since she had nothing to do, she could inquire about what happened to Huayan Temple in the past. After they finished talking about this matter, the two of them didn't say anything, but neither of them had the intention to return to the cultivation room. The 5 saints and the legend of the 5 saints were originally just rumors to them. But now, such an incident happened right before their eyes, and they were almost involved in it. Mo Tinga, in particular, had a lot on her mind. She originally thought the inescapable net was an imitation, but it turned out to be the real thing. Then what about the Fuxing sword? She asked revered Wu Ming what the 5 sacred objects were because she had a strong premonition. Revered Wu Ming's answer was both within her expectations and beyond her expectations. It was within her expectations because she had a premonition that the Fuxing sword might also be one, and it turned out it really was. It was beyond her expectations because she originally thought the legend of the 5 saints was very far away from her, but it turned out she actually had 2 sacred objects. Then she immediately remembered that many people knew she had the Fuxing sword in her hands. When she exchanged for the Fuxing sword from Devil Monarch Xianyue, there were 7 cultivators in total. Those cultivators were scattered all over Yunzhong, and many of them were disciples of big cultivation groups. Not good. Mo Tiange suddenly thought of something and stood up abruptly, drenched in cold sweat. What's wrong? Nia Wushang looked at her in confusion. Yang Qingji, Mo Tiange muttered, Yang Qingji knows. Nia Wushang frowned, not understanding what she meant. You mean Yang Qingji knows us? What's the big deal? We don't have any grudges against him, right? No. Mo Tiange shook her head with a pale face. Mo Tiange shook her head with a pale face. Do you remember what the 5 holy artifacts revered Avidya mentioned just now? Of course I remember. In addition to the Heavenly Devil Tower and the Inescapable Net, there's also the soul-restricting bead, Wuming Lu, and the Fuxing sword. Do you think the soul-restricting bead is the one in Ling Yunhe's hands? She thought for a moment then shook her head. It shouldn't be, right? If the soul-restricting bead is a sacred object, how could it be taken away from the cultivation group by a core formation cultivator? I don't care whether Ling Yunhe's soul-restricting bead is the one or not. Mo Tiange sat down again and held her forehead. What I want to tell you is that the Fuxing sword is in my hands. Clang! The teacup Nia Wushang just picked up fell on the table. She suddenly looked up at Mo Tiange, narrowed her eyes, and said in disbelief, What did you say? I said, one of the 5 sacred objects, the Fuxing sword, is in my hands. Mo Tiange slowly repeated, and Yang Qingji knows about this. Nia Wushang didn't need to say anything else. In an instant, her complexion turned deathly pale. In that case, they... Before she could finish, she suddenly grabbed Mo Tiange's sleeve. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go before they come. Go. Mo Tiange smiled bitterly. Guifang City is the real inescapable net with a late-stage nascent soul cultivator guarding it. Where should we go? There was still only one answer, enter the virtual sky world. But in that case, she would have to face the problem of how to explain to Nia Wushang. Upon hearing that, Nia Wushang let go of her hand dejectedly. Right. If they've already noticed us, then wait. She looked up and asked, when revered Wu Ming answered this question, Yang Qingji wasn't there, right? Right. Mo Tiange hesitated for a moment. But if revered Wu Ming knows, doesn't Guifang Demon Monarch know? Then think about it. When Yang Qingji first knew you had the Fuxing sword, did he have any special reaction? Mo Tiange thought for a moment then shook her head. I exchanged the Fuxing sword from a devil cultivator. At that time, there were several core formation cultivators present. If they knew, how could they let me exchange it? At that time, in their eyes, the Fuxing sword was just a very useless ancient treasure that lost its former power but was still very famous. Nia Wushang breathed a sigh of relief. You see, Yang Qingji didn't know at that time, so Guifang Demon Monarch didn't tell him before. Maybe he still doesn't know. Mo Tiange pondered silently. During this period of time, it was really hard to say whether Guifang Demon Monarch told Yang Qingji or not. In the past few decades, the Heavenly Devil Tower caused turmoil in the whole of Yunzhong, and the legend of the 5 saints of Yunzhong became widely known. Under such circumstances, the 5 sacred objects, which were originally very secretive, became an interesting anecdote passed by word of mouth among Yunzhong cultivators. It wasn't impossible for those late nascent soul cultivators who knew the secret to tell their juniors about it. No, if Yang Qingji knew the Fuxing sword was one of the 5 sacred objects and she was in Guifang City, how could he have waited until now and not come to ask for it? That meant Yang Qingji most likely didn't know about this. Thinking up to this point, Mo Tiange felt a little relieved. Up until now, no one had come to trouble her. At the very least, it showed that the several cultivators who knew she had the Fuxing sword didn't know it was one of the 5 sacred objects. However, this incident reminded her of something. Those people didn't know now, but what about in the future? Among those 7 people, there were many disciples from big cultivation groups, and among them were people like Han Shizhi, who was both scheming and had a high status. It was very likely they would participate in the secret affairs of their cultivation groups. At that time, if they knew she had the Fuxing sword, they definitely wouldn't be polite and would go to her door to snatch it. In that case, I should be safe for the time being. But now, I have to disguise myself and hide my identity. Seeing that Mo Tiange understood, Nia Wushang also relaxed and said with a smile, "You still want to hide your identity? Even your name is fake." Mo Tiange also smiled. She really didn't use her real name much outside. When she was young, she changed her name to Yi Xiaotian because of her father's clan. After she came to Yunzhong, the name Qin Wei came from her Daoist name. Although she wasn't the same as before, she never lost the sense of crisis she had when she was young. In fact, you don't have to worry too much. I know a little about disguise, so I can teach you. After this matter is over, you should leave Guifang City as soon as possible, disguise yourself and hide in the secular world. Presumably, they won't be able to find you no matter how strong they are. Based on the current situation, this was already a relatively good method. Mo Tiange thought about it and sighed. Inescapable net is fine. I got it by accident, and it was the original owner who came to ask for it, so I'll just hand it over. However, I got this Fuxing sword fair and square, so I'm really not willing to let them have it so easily. Otherwise, as long as I handed the thing over, I wouldn't have anything to do with it. Nia Wushang curled her lips. What are you talking about? You're good at everything, but you're too unambitious. If there's something good, it'll be a waste not to take it, and it'll be a waste not to snatch it. Whoever is stronger and luckier will get it. Unless it's absolutely necessary, why should I give it to them? Mo Tiange smiled bitterly. Although she had left Master Song Feng, Nia Wushang's way of thinking was deeply influenced by Master Song Feng, who was much more overbearing than her. In fact, she didn't want to give it to them, but she was more afraid of trouble. In any case, as long as the Fuxing sword was in her hands, danger would always follow her. After a few days, if Guifang Demon Monarch didn't come to trouble her, she could leave Guifang City. In addition, she also had to find a chance to go to Nanzhou and see Venerable Avidya. When she handed the inescapable net to Venerable Avidya, she still had a question she wanted to ask, but it wasn't convenient for her to say it out loud, so she just transmitted her voice to him, saying she would ask him in private. Later, Guifang Demon Monarch just happened to arrive, so Venerable Avidya didn't answer. However, since she handed over the inescapable net so straightforwardly and didn't make any excessive requests, Venerable Avidya presumably wouldn't refuse. Just as she thought about this, Nia Wushang suddenly raised her eyebrows and said, "Someone's coming." Chapter 433. The aura was getting closer and closer. The newcomer didn't seem to have any intention of hiding his tracks and just walked slowly towards their cave. He was in the middle stage of the core formation realm, and he was alone. Yang Qingji. Mo Tiange and Nia Wushang looked at each other and guessed at the same time. The answer was soon revealed. Yang Qingji's voice came from outside. "Fellow Taoists, old friends meet again. You don't mind meeting me, right? Yang Qingji's real voice was clear and a little sharp, but his attitude was always so arrogant. His voice, which was supposed to be pleasant to listen to, always had a hint of impatience in it, which made people unhappy. Nia Wushang asked with her eyes. Mo Tiange pondered for a while then nodded. Yang Qingji coming alone was already very clear, he shouldn't be looking for trouble. Although they didn't have any friendship with Yang Qingji, they didn't have any grudges either. After Mo Tiange removed the restriction, Nia Wushang opened the cave. Yang Qingji was standing outside, dressed in black, without a mask, and without any magic weapon in his hands. Seeing the two of them, he first nodded to Mo Tiange. Fellow Daoist Qin. Mo Tiange smiled. He was so casual, so she didn't salute him. Fellow Daoist Yang, long time no see. Then Yang Qingji's gaze fell on Nia Wushang. His eyes were cold. After staring for a while, he said, "You must be fellow Daoist Tian Can, right?" "I didn't know fellow Daoist Tian Can was a woman disguised as a man." Nia Wushang wasn't wearing a mask or a disguise, so her gender was obvious at first glance. She also didn't want to hide it anymore. That day in Carefree Valley, she just happened to disguise herself to avoid being tracked by Tianyan sect. It wasn't intentional. "Fellow Daoist Yang has a good eye," Nia Wushang said faintly, not intending to oppose him. In Carefree Valley, she only mocked Yang Qingji because she disliked his behavior. She really didn't need to remember such a trivial matter until now. Unfortunately, Yang Qingji obviously didn't think so. He raised the corner of his mouth, looking like he was smiling, but his eyes were gloomy and his voice was full of sarcasm. "I really can't tell. Fellow Daoist Tian Can not only has a fake appearance, but also a fake gender and cultivation level. You're obviously a devil cultivator, but your disguise is so flawless. I just don't know if his name and identity are also fake." Upon hearing such provocative words, Nia Wushang just indifferently glanced at him and said, "Whether it's true or false, what does it have to do with fellow Daoist Yang? If fellow Daoist Yang is so free, why don't you think about how to take back the sacred object?" Yang Qingji was fuming with anger at her attitude. She was clearly mocking him for not doing his job properly. It was childish and ridiculous. Mo Tiange sighed inwardly. She hadn't seen him for several decades, but why was this fellow Daoist Yang still so angry? Aside from mocking her a few times, Nia Wushang hadn't really offended him. "Fellow Daoist Yang." She promptly interrupted, "It's been many years since we last met. I wonder if fellow Daoist has any important matters to discuss with me this time." Hearing her voice, Yang Qingji became a little more rational, and he said lightly, "You two have been in Guifang City for many years, but I didn't know. Today, I specially came to pay a visit. Fellow Daoist Qin, you don't have any objections, right?" Mo Tiange paused for a moment then said, "Of course I don't have any objections." He thought to himself, why are Yang Qingji's words so unpleasant? If you want to visit, then visit. Would it kill you to say some polite words? "Fellow Daoist Yang, please come in. This Immortal's cave is simple and crude, so I'm sorry for not being a good host. Please don't take offense." Hearing what Mo Tiange said, Yang Qingji swaggered into the Immortal's cave and sat down. He still didn't say any polite words. However, no matter how rude he was, Mo Tiange didn't mind. It was fine as long as he didn't come for the supporting sword. The three of them sat down. Yang Qingji sized up this simple Immortal's cave with a critical gaze. Nia Wushang was bored, and Mo Tiange was full of doubts. After a while, Yang Qingji finally finished sizing up the place. He picked up the teacup and took a sip then said, "Fellow Taoists, since you came to Guifang City, why didn't you come to say hello? If it weren't for this coincidence, I wouldn't have known you two were here." Mo Tiange smiled and said, "Presumably, your master has already investigated. When fellow Daoist Tian Kan and I came here, we were both injured and were looking for a place to recuperate. Later, Yunzhong was in chaos, so it wasn't convenient for us to disturb you." Yang Qingji looked a little uncomfortable when he heard the word investigated. He said he came to visit, but in fact, he was ordered by his master to see if there was anything unusual about these two people. After all, things like Buddhist sacred objects were obtained from them, so he had to be cautious. While he was drinking tea with his head lowered, he secretly glanced at Mo Tiange and Nie Wushang. He only felt relieved when he found that their expressions were normal, as if this kind of thing was common and they didn't care about it at all. However, he was thinking too much. Not to mention that they didn't have any friendship. Even if they did, it wouldn't be a big deal for them to come and probe them when they encountered such a big event. Mo Tiange and Nie Wushang were used to it, so why would they care? This also showed that although Yang Qingji's master was complicated, he himself didn't understand the ways of the world. Fellow Daoist Yang. Since Yang Qingji didn't say anything for a long time, Mo Tiange had to break the silence first. "We haven't seen each other for 40 years since we parted at Carefree Valley. I didn't expect you to advance to the middle stage smoothly. Congratulations." Yang Qingji said uncomfortably, "Why are you so polite, fellow Daoist Qin? If you want to congratulate me, it's the two of you who advanced to the late stage. My achievement isn't worth mentioning." Mo Tiange said with a smile, "How is it the same? Fellow Daoist Tian Kan and I have been hiding in Guifang City all these years and haven't gone out to gain experience. On the contrary, fellow Daoist Yang not only escaped from the turmoil in Heavenly Devil Tower, but also advanced. This is much better than us cultivating in seclusion." Although it was a compliment, Mo Tiange wasn't talking nonsense. They hadn't seen the situation in Yunzhong in the past few decades, but they knew how tragic it was from the news outside. It wasn't easy for Yang Qingji to survive in this kind of turmoil and even advance successfully. Yang Qingji's expression became a lot better after hearing this. He showed a slight smile and said, "Fellow Taoists, you're busy, so I won't waste your time. In fact, I came here for 2 reasons. First, I reunited with an old friend, so I came to visit. Second, fellow Daoist Qin actually has a Buddhist sacred object in your hands. I'm very curious, so..." "I see." Mo Tiange's expression was calm. She said with a smile, "In fact, I also think this matter is very inconceivable. If Huayan Temple hadn't come looking for me, I wouldn't have known I had a precious treasure. Alas, I had a precious treasure but didn't know it. When I found out, I had to hand it over. It's obvious that this thing really doesn't belong to me. It's useless to ask for more." When she said this, Mo Tiange looked regretful and deeply regretful. Seeing that she didn't seem to be pretending, Yang Qingji couldn't help but sympathize with her. He said, "Fellow Daoist Qin, you don't have to feel too regretful. The Heavenly Devil Tower alone caused several decades of turmoil in Yunzhong and countless cultivators died. It's clear that sometimes having a precious treasure isn't a good thing. Cultivators like us don't have enough strength to hold this kind of magic weapon, so it's better to hand it over. Otherwise, it's not worth it to lose our lives. Fellow Daoist Yang is right." Mo Tiange readily agreed. "If I didn't think that way, I also wouldn't have been willing to hand over this treasure. Who told us to have low cultivation levels? There are some things we can only endure. It's good that fellow Daoist Qin can think things through." When Yang Qingji said this, his tone was a bit awkward. Once he finished speaking, he impatiently asked, "May I know how fellow Daoist Qin obtained this Buddhist holy relic?" Mo Tiange already knew she had to explain everything, so she didn't waste any time. She told them what happened 40 years ago. In the end, she said, speaking of which, not long after, I met fellow Daoist Yang, but I don't know if fellow Daoist Yang was in Sky Snow City at that time. I see. Yang Qingji felt it was a pity. At that time, he seemed to be rushing to Sky Snow City, but unfortunately, he almost missed the holy relic. However, even if he ran into it, it would have been useless. At that time, he had no idea this thing was one of the 5 holy relic. Feeling there was nothing to ask about this matter, Yang Qingji changed the subject. May I know what fellow Taoists plan to do next? Seeing that Yang Qingji didn't ask any more questions, Mo Tiange breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, what else can I do? Fellow Daoist Yang also knows I'm not from Yunzhong. If it weren't for the turmoil in Yunzhong these past few decades, I would have left and returned to my hometown. Now that the turmoil has gradually subsided, I'll leave as soon as I finish dealing with my own affairs. Oh, I forgot. Speaking of which, fellow Daoist Qin, you've been in Yunzhong for a long time. You haven't returned for a long time. You must miss your family very much, right? Yes. Mo Tiange's eyes were filled with longing. Maybe they'll come to Yunzhong. What about fellow Daoist Tian Can? Yang Qingji shifted his gaze to Nie Wushang. Why haven't you spoken? Nie Wushang seemed to be lost in thought. Upon hearing his voice, she glanced at him and said faintly, I don't like to talk. What do you want to ask, fellow Daoist Yang? Yang Qingji frowned slightly and repeated his question. May I know what fellow Daoist Tian Can plans to do next? Do you want to leave Guifang City? Nie Wushang was silent for a moment before she answered, I can't answer fellow Daoist Yang for the time being. I've always done things as I please. I might leave tomorrow, or I might stay here for a few more years. She really couldn't make up her mind. Although the matter of the Buddhist holy relic had nothing to do with them, it was hard to say what consequences it would have. But if she left in her current state, it wouldn't be appropriate. Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit strange, Mo Tiange smiled and said, fellow Daoist Yang only asked about us, but I wonder what your plans are. We've been in Guifang City all these years. I heard you're the disciple most likely to advance to the nascent soul realm under your master, and you're very valued. Once you advance to the nascent soul realm, you might inherit the position of the city lord. It's really worth celebrating. When this matter was brought up, Yang Qingji didn't look happy at all. He said faintly, fellow Daoist Qin is considerate. Unfortunately, this isn't what I want. Upon hearing his words and tone, Mo Tiange really wanted to step on Yang Qingji's face. Even if he still looked like a teenager, he was already a core formation cultivator. No matter how young he was, he'd lived for more than 100 years. Could it be that he didn't know how to say polite words? This time, she didn't feel like replying. The 3 of them sat in silence for a while. Yang Qingji finally realized the atmosphere wasn't right. He looked at Mo Tiange then looked at Nie Wushang. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he swallowed his words and said gloomily, fellow Taoists, it seems you have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. I'll visit you again later if I have the chance. Upon hearing what he said, Mo Tiange and Nie Wushang finally smiled and stood up to see him off. Fellow Daoist Yang, please go ahead. We'll meet again if there's a chance. Yang Qingji looked at Nie Wushang's rare smile and felt even more depressed. He casually cupped his hands then stood up to leave. Chapter 434. Yang Qingji's visit basically showed Guifang demon monarch's attitude. The Buddhist sacred object was no longer in Mo Tiange's hands, so the 2 of them had no value to Guifang demon monarch. Since Yang Qingji didn't say anything, they shouldn't have any trouble. Mo Tiange breathed a sigh of relief, but she wasn't completely relieved. She still had the Fushing sword, so she had to hide her traces as soon as possible before others found out. Nia Wushang also understood this, so she hurriedly taught her some disguising techniques and taught her the appearance-mimicking technique. The so-called appearance-mimicking technique was actually a kind of illusion technique. This kind of technique could even fool high-level cultivators, but Nia Wushang said that since it was a technique, it could be cracked. Although her technique could be regarded as high-level, it probably couldn't fool late-stage, nascent soul cultivators. For this reason, Nia Wushang especially told her that it'd be best for her to master the art of disguise as soon as possible. The crudest method was also the one that was the hardest to crack. If she could dress herself up perfectly, it wouldn't matter how strong other people's divine senses were. Mo Tiange agreed to each of her instructions, then she bid farewell to Nia Wushang and quietly left Guifang City. Of course, Guifang Demon Monarch must have known about this. However, she was useless now, so no one came to stop her. She boldly left Guifang City, fled east for several hundred miles, and entered the complex mountain range of northern Lin country. There were neither outstanding spirit veins nor dense devil aura here. Except for a few low-level cultivators, there was no one else here. Mo Tiange carefully paid attention to her back. After finding no traces of others, she entered the virtual sky world and disguised herself according to Nia Wushang's instructions. She stayed in the virtual sky world for several days. Even if someone really followed her, they should have left, so Mo Tiange left the virtual sky world. At this time, she already looked like a young scholar. Although Nia Wushang said her appearance-mimicking technique couldn't fool late-stage, nascent soul cultivators, Mo Tiange still used it. First, she was a bit shorter than Nia Wushang, which made it easy for her to arouse suspicion if she disguised as a man, but it was basically useless if she disguised as a woman. Second, she had the spirit-concealing pendant, which, when used with the appearance-mimicking technique, might be able to fool high-level cultivators. Besides, late-stage nascent soul cultivators were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. There were only 4 or 5 in the celestial pole. Even if there were more in Yunzhong than in the celestial pole, there were at most 10 or so. How could they be encountered so easily? As long as she did not reveal the matter of the Fushing sword, no one would see her even if she wanted to. After transforming, Mo Tiange swaggered out of the northern Qilin country's mountain range and entered the market. She didn't hide her cultivation level. Although core formation cultivators were high-level cultivators in Yunzhong, they weren't rare. This way, she could avoid being disturbed by low-level cultivators. Once she returned to Eastern Tang, she randomly chose a cultivation town near the sea and inquired about the South Pole Island. Sure enough, very few people knew about the South Pole Island. After asking many people, a cultivator who had just returned from the North Pole Island told her that the South Pole Island had already sunk. This news was the same as several years ago. It seemed that the miracle didn't happen. The South Pole Island really disappeared. Mo Tiange had long been mentally prepared for this, so she wasn't too depressed. She quickly pulled herself together and continued to inquire about information. Actually, she could have gone to the Jiuyan sect to ask for information while she was collecting the debt from Ling Yunhe. Or she could have gone to Nanzhou's Baifu Mountain and asked revered Wu Ming for advice. However, she didn't dare to rashly reveal her identity because of the Fushing sword, so she could only put this matter aside for the time being. Deepwater City was a small city located on the edge of the North Sea. In terms of size, it was only slightly bigger than an ordinary town. In terms of power, there was only one small and medium-sized cultivation group with an early-stage, nascent soul cultivator in the surrounding area. However, this small city was very prosperous because it happened to be located on the edge of the North Sea, across the sea from the North Pole Island. No matter how rich a place was, a teleportation formation was still too expensive for low-grade cultivators. Thus, crossing the sea became their choice. Moreover, there were many low-level sea beasts in the sea area near Deepwater City, so some low-level cultivators made a living by hunting beasts in the vicinity. Relying on these low-level cultivators, Deepwater City gradually prospered and became a small beast core trading market on the edge of the North Sea. Over time, even some high-level cultivators who were too lazy to go to the North Pole Island would come to Deepwater City to look for some special beast cores. The tea house in Deepwater City was particularly lively today. Most of the cultivators coming and going in a city were of the same standard. For a small city like Deepwater City, there wouldn't be many cultivators above the core formation realm coming and going like some big cities. Usually, only foundation building cultivators were in charge of the tea house in Deepwater City. Occasionally, a core formation cultivator would come and collect beast cores, which was why the tea house would be lively for a while. However, today's grand occasion wasn't like the past, which was caused by core formation cultivators collecting beast cores. "Brother, make way, make way." A youngster in the fifth layer of the aura refining realm squeezed in from outside the tea house and shouted at the cultivator in front of him, "Excuse me, excuse me." The cultivator in front of him was unwilling to give way and only said, "Brother, first come, first served." The youngster blinked and said in puzzlement, "Brother, it only takes a while to appraise the beast cores, right? You've been crowding around here for a long time. Aren't you just here to watch the show? Beast cores." The cultivator was surprised. "Didn't you inquire clearly? This time, we're not here to collect beast cores." "Huh?" The youngster was puzzled. "Didn't we just hear that a core formation senior came to our Deepwater City? If he's not here to collect beast cores, what else is he here for?" A small city like Deepwater City was destined to have no high-level cultivators staying here. Those high-level cultivators were either just passing by or coming to collect special beast cores. There had never been an exception. Those who really wanted to collect high-level beast cores or hunt high-level sea beasts would directly teleport to North Pole Island, who would come to Deepwater City. Before the cultivator could answer, someone next to him interrupted, "Fellow Daoist, didn't you inquire about this before you came? This senior isn't here to collect beast cores, he's here to collect anecdotes." "Huh?" The youngster was surprised. "What's going on? Anecdotes?" He couldn't be blamed for being so surprised. When they first heard about this, everyone had the same reaction. Which high-level cultivator wasn't busy with cultivation? What anecdotes? What was the use of hearing them? This senior said he's collecting these anecdotes to explore some secret places. Some things aren't strange just by looking at them, but if he collects them all together, he might be able to find some wonderful places. His cultivation has reached a bottleneck, so he's traveling everywhere to collect anecdotes, hoping to find some clues that might help him break through the bottleneck. So that's how it is. The youngster was suddenly enlightened. He touched his head and said, "These seniors with profound cultivation levels really think more clearly than us. Isn't that so? If this senior didn't tell me, I would have never thought about it." The first cultivator agreed. The two of them chatted for a while and got a little closer to each other. The cultivator pulled the youngster forward and said, "Let's just listen here. This senior is very generous. As long as you tell him some rumors, he'll accept any medicinal pills or spirit stones he wants. If someone asks for guidance, he won't refuse. Let's listen on the side. Maybe we'll gain something." Right after he said that, another person next to him made a gesture of silence and said in a low voice, "This senior is going to talk. Don't make a sound." The cultivator promptly shut his mouth and listened attentively. After a while, a gentle male voice was heard. "There's nothing wrong with your cultivation level. What's wrong is your state of mind. Every time you advance, aside from improving your cultivation level, your understanding of the Tao scriptures teachings will also go one step further. Put down your cultivation for the time being and walk around. Once your understanding of the scriptures teachings has gone one step further, you can go back and cultivate. The foundation building cultivator sitting on the other side of the long table was startled. He carefully savored it and suddenly understood. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Senior. Junior finally understands." On the other side of the long table, the gentle young scholar waved his hand and said, "This is your reward. No need to thank me." He then looked behind the foundation building cultivator and asked, "Is there anyone else?" Me. Someone immediately squeezed in from behind. It was a man in his 30s, dressed in short clothes, and his cultivation level was in the aura refining realm. At first glance, it was obvious that he was a low-level individual cultivator who hunted sea beasts for a living in Deepwater City. If it was under other circumstances, he definitely wouldn't dare to be so presumptuous in front of a foundation-building cultivator. However, this core formation senior said that regardless of cultivation level, as long as the information he provided was valuable, he could exchange it for a reward. When the foundation-building cultivator saw this man leaning against him, he frowned. However, there was a core formation senior in front of him. Moreover, this senior had been smiling and didn't show the slightest bit of impatience, so he could only endure it. He cupped his hands and bowed to this senior before pushing the crowd aside and leaving the tea house. "Sit." The young scholar pointed at the seat in front of him and said, "Do you have any news?" The man cautiously sat down and glanced at the young scholar. A nervous expression appeared on his face and he timidly extended his hand. "Senior, Junior doesn't have any news, but Junior has a strange treasure in my hands. I want to show it to Senior. Are you interested?" The more he spoke, the softer his voice became. In the end, he consciously stopped talking and looked at the young man in front of him with unease. This senior clearly said he came here to collect strange news and not to exchange for items. His behavior was already considered a violation of the rules. If this senior got angry, then sure enough, when he heard what he said, the young scholar slightly furrowed his brows. However, in the next moment, his gaze still fell on the man's hand. This was a translucent red, sparkling and translucent stone that emitted a faint spiritual aura. For aura refining cultivators, this was indeed a treasure. However, for a core formation cultivator, this spiritual aura was a bit too weak. The young scholar was about to speak when he suddenly noticed something. He reached out and picked up the stone in the man's hand. After carefully examining it, he said, "This is fire obsidian. It can't be considered too valuable and it's also a bit too small. However, its quality isn't bad, so it has some value." Hearing what he said, the man was delighted and promptly nodded. "Senior has good eyes. When I took this stone to the shop to sell, they were only willing to pay 10 spirit stones. The shopkeeper didn't know what it was, so I never sold it. Senior, do you want it?" The young scholar thought for a moment then said, "This thing is somewhat useful to me, so there's no harm in taking it. 10 spirit stones is indeed a bit low. With this kind of quality, it's probably worth about 100 spirit stones. Take a look, do you want spirit stones or medicinal pills?" "About 100 spirit stones." The man was overjoyed. For a low-level cultivator like him, 100 spirit stones wasn't a small amount. However, when he looked at the several jade bottles and piles of spirit stones on the table, he gulped and cautiously said, "Senior, can I exchange them for medicinal pills?" The young scholar nodded. "Of course you can." As he said that, he pushed one of the jade bottles towards the man. "This bottle of medicinal pills is for aura refining cultivators to take. This bottle is worth about 180 spirit stones, so the value is about the same. Take it." Thank you, Senior, thank you, Senior. The man grabbed the jade bottle, put it into his chinquan bag, and repeatedly expressed his thanks. The young scholar waved his hand. Go. Then he raised his voice and said, Is there anyone else? Me. Me. Seeing the man's encounter, some low-level cultivators who were originally just watching the fun also came forward. This senior was good-natured and generous. If they could exchange some medicinal pills worth a few spirit stones with him, they would definitely make a profit. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.